All right, we are live.
What is up, everybody? Monday Night Live.
Jonathan's here early.
We got rained out tonight.
You got rained out?
Yeah.
I thought you got winded out. It's been super windy here.
I was surprised we were rained out with all the wind we had because I was in Sykeston all day, so I don't know what time it stopped raining up here. It rained enough to flood the parking lots down there. So
Oh, did it really?
Oh yeah, it was bad. It was bad.
Yeah, it just kind of sprinkled, light shower around here. It wasn't anything crazy, but the wind was blowing like 25, 30 miles an hour.
It was rough.
Absolutely nuts.
I was driving down the interstate today, and it was just
yeah,
fighting it the whole time.
Man, I was doing like yard work. I've been needing to put some rock in this flower garden forever, and I keep fishing on my days off. Today was the day that I
can't blame you.
Brought the dump trailer and got it done.
I mean, a Monday through Friday, and you're off of work. Why would you not go fishing?
Yeah,
deal with the lake not being full.
See who all we got in here. We got Bradley Clark, Evan Singer here from Table Rock. What's up, man? Nicholas Estes, Evan. How's the lake? Darius, what's up, Darius?
Loyal follower.
Darius has been shooting some pretty nice pictures of Kentucky Lake in the morning. It's good to see that stuff. We got Tom in here. What's up, man? Andy, what's going on? Jay Beffa. Jay had a pretty solid finish. They fished that Warrior William tournament down there at Lake of the Ozarks.
Second, right?
Yeah. Him awesome. And Shaq got second, so that's
Congrats,
awesome.
Congrats, Jay.
I'm gonna really try to fish that next year. That just looked like a lot of fun. Just a good group of guys and a lot of great giveaways and just all around.
And it's for a good cause. At the end of the day, it's a great cause, great organization from what I've read on it and saw that you guys have posted. I mean, why not go down and fish and support that? I know I play in a couple golf tournaments like that every year that are just absolute. I mean, they're heartfelt at the beginning. You know, you're there for the right reasons. Win or lose, you're just there to support and have a good time.
Yeah, no doubt, man. It's nothing but a good thing. Tom was saying, what's up, everyone? We had all 4 seasons of weather today. It definitely is blowing hard.
I tell you what, I was on the way over and I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about, if you just looked outside today, if you weren't outside today, if you just looked out the window, it looked like a cold, nasty fall day. And then you stepped out of the car and I was like, nope, it's still hot.
Yeah, it was a little bit humid.
I think we're about to get a break though.
Yeah. I saw highs in like the high 30s someday, like the extended
forecast. Highs or the lows?
I mean the lows.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the lows in the high 30s. Yeah, I got that flipped around.
That's gonna turn it all on.
What's up, Bill? Darius? No, I didn't fall asleep. We were just kind of getting everything prepared. What's up, Kobe Baker? Good to see you in here. Jeremiah, William Heiler.
It's a new face.
Kevin,
isn't it?
Lake of the Ozarks. Yeah. Todd
Kevin?
Phelps. What's up? Doug's in here. Auto Trieve.
Welcome, Doug.
I saw Doug and Jason were jacking some spoonfish on Clearwater, I do believe. T. Harris. What's up, man?
We got some new names here tonight.
Yeah.
Or did I always miss these names?
No, some of these are new. Got Harry in here. Billy, what's up? Hope the tournament went well for you. It looked like it did. I mean, Jason sent several pictures. I saw your post. Looked like a great time, man. So tonight we're going to talk, kind of do some tournament recaps. We got a surprise guest. We got Uncle Ron DeRosa is going to jump on here. It's been a while. We'll pull him in here in just a little bit. And we're going to kind of break down what's going on in Southern Illinois and Southeast Missouri. We're going to do some tournament recaps. I want to talk a little bit about the Lake of the Ozarks MLF BFL Super Tournament that I fished a couple weeks ago. Didn't really get a chance to touch too much on that. I got a pretty good boat driving story that I think you guys will get a kick out of. And then the Norfolk Regional, had a time down there. That was a good time. And then Jonathan had a solid finish this weekend in a tournament. So we'll touch on that, and then we'll go over a couple techniques. I think we're going to dive into buzzbaits and some jigs, some football jigs and swim jigs, because all that stuff is playing really good right now. We got Larry from Bull Shows. Just got back from Norfolk, Larry, and beautiful country down there. Very, very beautiful country. We stayed in Mountain Home, and the population's like 12,000 something, but it looks like there's enough places to eat for a town of like 40,000.
It's kind of like Kate.
No, it's like even more than Kate.
Really?
Yeah, I was blown away. So they must have a lot of people come into that area, over the warm period of the year. It's got to be just to support all that business. Let's see. Yeah, Billy says the tournament was a huge success.
Neil, how will Egypt fish this weekend with the cold front? Let's hope really well. I'm expecting good things with this cold front. Fall fishing is a little bit different, in my opinion. Cold fronts tend to, for me, help the bite.
Yeah.
In the fall. Now, adverse effects in summer and spring, but a cold front, fall and winter, usually kind of kickstarts
it kind of stirs everything up and
feedback.
Kind of reactivates things, and we're all waiting for that water temperature to drop. And cold fronts are what does that. Let me share this lake of the
hold on
go ahead.
Are we doing a giveaway tonight?
We are doing a giveaway.
So I saw a lot of new faces.
We're doing a giveaway.
Explain how the giveaway
works. Let's explain how the giveaway goes. To the folks that are new on here, we do a giveaway. We call it, I can't say that word.
Well,
okay, the giveaway is not going on yet. It's called the Sasquatch giveaway. So sometime during the stream, I'm going to reference the word Sasquatch in a story or something. And when that happens, there's Stephanie. She's going to win again. She's like, and I got to get your stuff out to you, Stephanie. I just got back into town, so we'll get all that taken care of. But sometime during the stream, I'm going to reference Sasquatch. And then you guys out there guess a number between 1 and 200. Jonathan's going to write down a number between 1 and 200. And whoever guesses that number gets the prize pack. The prize pack tonight is going to be a couple Cumberland Pro products, a little bit of Hawgz Custom Bait stuff, and then also grab those jigs right there. We had a guy on the live stream when we had Brent Anderson on. Let me see I've reached out to him, or we've been talking back and forth. It just says Star Jigs. I can't remember his name. I'm sorry about that, but Star Jigs. So he sent a box of jigs for giveaways. Pretty sweet looking jigs. They've got some round silicone with some flat silicone. It's a custom molded head design. I was messaging him back and forth about the jigs. So we're gonna throw in a couple of these, and we'll be kind of mixing and matching. And then we still got Jeff Moon's Auto Body over there. Has donated some money toward the giveaways. We're gonna be getting that up and running. Me and Jonathan just gotta sit down and
sounds like we need either a Tackle Warehouse order or a
Omnia Fishing.
Omnia Fishing?
Yeah, we're getting it from Omnia Fishing.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, I wore the Tackle Warehouse hat.
Yeah. If they don't have it, then we'll go to Tackle Warehouse.
Or we can go to Academy.
Yeah, Stephanie likes the Cumberland Pro products. It's great. So let's do that boat story. Let me dive into this boat story, and then we'll get Ron in here.
Is this the one that you told me the other day?
Yes.
Hang on. All I got to do is say, hang on. It's a good one.
Okay, so BFL Super Tournament on Lake of the Ozarks. The way the BFO works is they send you a text around 6:30 the night before the tournament, and it's got your boater or your co-angler, depending on what side of the tournament you're on. I'm a co-angler, so I got my boater's information. I give him a call, leave a message, no response. About an hour and a half later, get a text. He says, "Hey, I have limited cell reception, so just meet me at the ramp in the morning around 6 o'clock." So I run over from the 26-mile marker of the Osage, PB2, about a 15-minute run. I jumped in with Greg, and I pull into PB2. So I pull my cell phone out of my pocket, make a phone call, and Jason answers the phone. He says, "Hey, I'm back at the courtesy dock." So the courtesy dock is right at the boat ramp. So we idle through boat check, and then we make our way back there. He said, "I'm in a yellow Skeeter." So I see a yellow Skeeter sitting there, jump in with him. It's kind of quiet. We get to talking. He's like, "Yeah, this is the maiden voyage of this boat." And I'm like, "What, the maiden voyage?" He said, "Yeah, I bought it from a guy down in Louisiana, had a blown motor, and I'm a motor mechanic, and I got it all put back together, and I haven't ran it yet, but this is the first day that I'm actually going to run it." So I'm thinking, man, I hope this guy's a good motor mechanic, and we're making the 30-mile run on top of that.
On Lake of the Ozarks.
On Lake of the Ozarks.
On a really pretty weekend.
Yeah, which is fun in the morning, but it's a totally different story in the afternoon. So we make a run, and we run up the Osage, and we turn into the Niangua. As soon as we turn into the Niangua, there's a fog bank. You cannot see the front of the boat. It's ridiculous. Well, Jason has a little bitty Humminbird graph. It's not even turned on. I don't even know if it's powered. He has no graph up front. There's like a cutout for a 5-inch graph that's just empty. So we're running with no chart at all, full fog. And he knows the lake pretty good, obviously, which thank God.
You're still here. So
I'm still here. Yeah. So we slow down a little bit. We're still up on pad, and then we kind of ease over and we find a point, and then we fish a little bit, and then we ease on up the lake a little bit. We'll hit a little open area, and then it gets foggy again. So we pull over and get our bearings straight, and then make our way. Finally, after a couple hours, it clears up and we start fishing. So the day was okay. I actually caught, let's see, I had a keeper early. I had about a 4-pound keeper early. So that always feels good, fishing out the back of the boat. We were fishing docks. He was moving really fast, fishing docks, just swimming a jig down docks. So I had to really focus on my cast because I didn't get a whole lot of opportunities. It was just one of those days where you're moving really fast and you had to be on point to catch a few fish behind somebody like that. So the way back, on the way back, we're running down the lake, and his trolling motor foot pedal in the recessed foot pedal tray comes flying out, back up. Beautiful day, like Jonathan said. There is boat traffic everywhere. It's like a wash machine. It's super, super rough. We're in a 20-foot Skeeters. The first time he's drove it. So he said he was trying to figure out how to drive the boat, and it was kind of a rough ride anyway. So this foot pedal comes flying out of the boat. He slows down to about 25, just enough to keep it up on pad, and it's rough out there. So I kind of did a little army belly crawl up the front deck, grabbed this pedal, threw it in the boat, and so it's not fastened down. So it's just bam, 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 nonstop. So we're going down the lake a little bit longer. 5 minutes later, the whole dash comes off.
The console dash.
The console, like the instrument panels and all that, it falls on top of the steering wheel. And we're doing this. So he pushes that back up. The trolling motor pedal is just flopping around. The dash keeps on falling on his knuckles, and it's chaos. There's really nothing I can do. I mean, I can't reach over there and hold that up for him. It's just too rough. I'm grabbing the OS handle down there and just hanging on for dear life. So then he's got a whopper plopper on a rod up on the front deck. It comes sliding down around the steering wheel, hits the side of his boat and jumps across thigh number 1 and sticks in thigh number 2. So he's got this, it was like the 130, I guess, the medium size one. So he's got a size probably like 2 aught.
Number 2 or number.
It's a big hook.
It's a big hook.
It's stuck in his thigh. Okay. So the dash is coming down, the trolling motor pedal's flopping around. He's got a whopper plopper stuck in his thigh. So he just reaches down and rips it out. Well, when he rips it out, it gets stuck in his hand. So he's
one bad thing to another.
I'm like, what can I do? And I didn't know what to do. I'm like, what can I do? And then he takes his hand off the steering wheel, rips it out, and just throws it into down on the floorboard. He's got slack in his braid, so his braid's on the side of the boat, just kind of on the water, just flopping up and down. Long story short, we made it back
in one piece.
In one piece.
Well, you made it back in one piece.
The boat was in a couple pieces. I'm sure that trolling motor pedal was trashed. I weighed in 5'8", and I finished in, I can't even remember. I think I finished in 42nd, but I moved from 45th in the points to 34th in the points. So I qualified to fish their regional at Norfolk Lake. So all in all, it was a great day. I mean, I missed a check by, I think it was less than a pound. It seems like it's always less than a pound. It's always one fish. It's just always one fish. That's just the way the season's been going. But I was just happy to arrive at PB2 alive.
Unscathed.
Yeah.
No hooks in you.
Great guy. We had fun. He caught a ton of fish. I caught a few fish behind him, but it was a learning experience. And I'm just glad that the guy knows how to work on motors. And then he put that motor back together like it was supposed to be. Because I'm thinking in the morning, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be one of those days. You just never know. So that's kind of.
I fished with some boat mechanics too. So
yeah,
I bought a boat from a boat mechanic, which was a good purchase. But it's man,
I'll have that video out this week, probably Friday. I got a Kincaid Lake tournament video out Wednesday. You guys can check out, and then that will be Friday, and then I'll start on the Norfolk stuff in the next coming weeks. So you can. So you see how that goes.
2-day super and your regional weren't that far apart, were they?
They were a week and a half or one. No, they were right. I can't even remember.
Like
they were either the next week or the following week.
Yeah, I think it was the following weekend.
Yeah.
So that's
it went by quick.
Usually when we fish the LBL division, it was like a month.
Yeah, they were just bang bangs right on top of each other.
Kind of makes it tough for planning if you're on that bubble, for planning for vacation with work and travel arrangements. But I know a lot of guys schedule that travel well in advance and cancel if they don't make it. So
yeah, they actually had to go down to mid 50s. You know, they take the top 45 to fish the regional, and I know Rick was in 54th, and they called him.
Really?
And then the guy I fished with first day, Tim Collier, at Norfolk, he was in the 50s too.
Really?
They called him. Yeah.
So it was a
lot of people didn't want to go.
That bang bang, and maybe it was Norfolk too.
A lot of it was Norfolk. A lot of people don't like Norfolk. It's kind of a stingy lake. You know, the weights were really low. 12 pounds. 12 pounds is a really good bag down there.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, kind of like we were talking last week with Brent Anderson, it doesn't matter how stingy that lake is. Somebody's going to cash a check. Somebody's going to win a boat. Somebody's going to go home with a lot of money.
Those little 12-inch spots are so important just to fill out your limit. I mean, if you got a couple decent largemouth, there was a 15-inch limit on largemouth and smallmouth, and then the spots were 12 inches. So it was caught a lot. I caught several 14 and a quarter, 14 and 3/4. It seems like no matter what lake you're at, it's always like the half-inch short of the length limit, whatever species. Well, it's amazing.
And you know all too well. I got two things to say here. You know all too well about the short fish from fishing cedar so much. Those short fish can make or break you. And I'll touch on that a little bit later from my recap from the weekend. But you also were saying those 15-inch fish, they didn't weigh anything down there.
Oh yeah, they were really, really thin. Well, those spots, like a 12.5-inch spot, weighed like 8 ounces, 9 ounces, and then I caught some 15.5-inch largemouths, and I think they might have barely weighed a pound or 2 pounds.
Really?
Yeah, they were thin.
Where that fish around here would be
2.5.
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah, they just weren't fat. I don't know why. I don't know if that's normal for down there, but it is what it is. You still got to catch them. I got to fish with we'll get Ron here. Ron, I'll pull you in here in just about 10 seconds here. Ron's down there hanging out in the queue. I got to fish with Jackson and Scott, which are two of the boaters that we've both fished with in the LBL division. I roomed with them and another guy named Luke. They were all special ops guys, Green Berets. So I was in safe hands.
Thank you for your service, guys. I don't know if they're listening or going to catch it later, but all three of them, thank you for your service.
Yeah, it was a blast, man. We had a really good time. But so Scott had the active target, so I got to see that a little bit. And then when I went out with Jackson the next day, we got to look at the live scope. He had live scope, and I actually caught a fish in 60 foot of water on a drop shot, watching my drop shot fall.
Did you watch the fish come up and eat it?
Yeah. Yeah. We were catching them between 40 and 60.
So did you feel the fish before you saw it?
No.
Or?
Jackson said he's got it. And about that time I felt a little bitty tick because you got so much line out.
Right.
You know, and I was only throwing a 1/4 ounce weight, so it wasn't real heavy.
Well, that by the time that field comes up.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was cool, man. You throw that thing out there and you could watch it just and those spots would come up from 60 foot and just meet it at about 40 foot and grab it.
And it would just stop falling.
Just kind of stop falling. It was addicting. It was very addicting.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
But it was fun to be able to see those fish and see how they were going to react to the bait. You know, once it hit the bottom, very few of them actually bit it. They all wanted it falling and they would come up to meet it almost every time. It was interesting.
Really?
Yeah. Which he was looking for the suspended fish, and usually you're looking for the fish that are on the bottom, right?
Right.
The suspended fish are the ones that are hard to catch. But on Norfolk, it was the other way around for us. Yeah, he was kind of targeting the fish that were suspended. They seemed like they were the ones that were biting.
So, question: you made the phone call yet? I'm wearing a shirt tonight.
Oh no! I looked though. I looked. I'm really, really close. It's got me wondering if I should do the live scope now though. Like I think he had the 1222.
That's the one that I was looking at.
Yeah, gosh, I don't know. I've got everything ran for Lowrance, so I'm still leaning towards Lowrance, but it's getting close. I think I'm gonna have to go fishing one more time and see a bunch of
Got to go with
bass.
You got to go with Ron.
Yeah, right. Let's pull Ron in here, man. He's been
Cheeto.
waiting patiently. Let's pull him in here. What's up, Ron?
Uncle Ron, what's up, brother?
What's up, guys?
Not much. How are you?
I'm good.
It's been a while. Let me turn you up a little bit. Okay. Yeah, so we had somebody in here asking about Lake of Egypt. I haven't been over to Egypt in probably, heck, it's been, last time I was over there, I did that silly speed crawl video. That's been like a month and a half ago, I guess. What's going on out there? How's the fishing out there?
Well, honestly, the last week or so, 10 days, I've been fishing over at Cedar because I fished that USA Bassin deal that JB was in. And by the way, good job on your second place, man.
Thank you.
So I haven't
much.
I haven't been over here for a few days. It'll be interesting to see what this cool weather coming does.
Do you think it's going to be a good change or a bad change immediately?
Yeah, and I think it's been kind of tough. So I think it'll make it better. It eventually always does. So I'm looking forward to fall. We really haven't had. We got a little tease of it, and then it got warm again.
It got downright hot.
Yeah, it was warm tournament day, and it was warm yesterday.
Yeah,
Mike's ready for the jerkbait bite. I'm with you too, man. I always look forward to that little jerkbait bite. It's coming, and then later on in the winter, I'm kind of tired of it. About February, I'm ready for something else.
Yeah.
Ready for those big females to get up shallow and throw that big spinnerbait.
Something, man. Chatterbait, spinnerbait. What's up, Eric? Good to see you on here. Got Rich on here. I'm sure Rich has got some BFL stories.
I think we all got BFL stories.
Yeah, we do.
Good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there was any break-in on that, man. We just kind of went, and we ran hard, too. We ran hard the whole way until we got to that fog. That's scary, man. Fog is so it's like so disorienting. You have no idea where you're at. You can't see. And the thing about Lake of the Ozarks is it's not just a slick bank. It's got docks, and you got retaining walls, and you just got stuff that you can run into if you get a little bit too close to the edge. And the Osage is pretty wide, but you turn up in the Niangua and it gets about half as wide. And the further you go up it, the narrower it gets. So there was less and less room for error. It's a crazy day. I hadn't been in a boat without a graph, without a GPS chart in a long, long time. So I just thought everybody had one of those, but no, not everybody.
Maybe not right when you get your boat or when you put your boat back together. Got to get the motor running first.
Yeah. What's up?
That would have been unnerving.
It was, Ron. It was pretty sketchy. I said a prayer, man. I closed my eyes. I just said, God, you're going to do what you're going to do. But if I have one request, please let me make it back to the boat ramp. That's all I'm asking. I don't care if I catch any fish.
Fish or no fish.
Just let me make it back alive. That boat.
I got a funny fog story. Is before GPS, there's a tournament every year on Little Grassy. And so me and my old buddy Dean were in it, and we launched at the old ramp right across from the marina. Well, hell, you can almost throw a rock from the old ramp to the marina. And we just put the boat in. We knew the lake, we thought, and we're going to just kind of idle over to the marina, before takeoff. And we're idling and idling and idling. And we're like, where in the hell are we? And then we ran into some other competitors that were out there idling around. We ended up by the spillway. And so that fog, I don't care how well you know a lake, that fog you have no idea where you're at. And you were telling that story. I was like, oh my gosh, that's not good.
I've had some of those mornings on Cedar, and I know Cedar fairly well. I grew up on that lake and running up the lake, just trying to find that one cove that you're looking for on either side of the lake. It's like, man, just there's no landmarks, there's no references when that fog's bad. It's just it's super sketchy. I mean, I'd rather run at night in the pitch black.
Oh yeah,
1,000%.
Yeah, you can see at night actually once your eyes adjust. You know, you can tell where you're at, but in that fog without GPS, and if you're running a big boat, even with GPS, you don't know who else is running around you.
Right.
You know, so that's I'm glad that all worked out okay. I mean, it ended up being a funny story, but that could have ended up different.
My fog story was Kentucky Lake. They let us go one morning, and we had a fog bank about Jonathan Creek, and about the time we hit the fog,
you got your own creek, man.
I know, I do have my own creek,
big time.
It was there long before me, though, I'm sure. Maybe I was named after it. I don't know. But the oil alarm or the engine alarm went off of my boater's boat, and he stopped in the middle of the channel. And we were like in the first 1 or 2 flights. So I knew everybody was running right behind us. We took out of the dam, and he just shut down right in the middle of the channel. I'm like, buddy, you gotta go somewhere. We'll fix this on the bank. I don't want to fix this out here in the middle of the channel. He's like, what's wrong? I said, well, nobody can see us, and nobody expects a boat to be stopped in the middle of the channel while they're running in this fog. Get out of the way.
Yeah.
I was like you. I was praying just to get the heck out of the channel. So
yeah, Alan says he qualified for the BFL regional on Ouachita. Any of you guys fished there? If so, was it cool? I've never fished Ouachita at all. I don't really know anything about it. Anybody on here know anything about Ouachita? Ron, you ever fished Ouachita?
Never. I don't know a thing about it.
Yeah.
Jay Beffa says I fished it, and it's a beautiful lake.
Okay. So you're gonna have some beautiful scenery, if nothing else.
I don't even know where it is.
It's Arkansas.
Where is it?
Arkansas, I believe.
Arkansas?
Yeah. I may be completely off my rocker on that one, but I think it's in Arkansas.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Somebody asked, can't remember where it's at, but somebody asked what I thought about active target versus the live scope, and if I liked one better than the other. I was impressed with the live scope because I've seen it before, but I haven't seen it in 40 and 60 foot of water. And there's something about when you've got that much water below you, you can really see things developed. First of all, your bait's fallen so far, you got a lot of time to watch it and see it developed, and you can see the whole thing kind of developed. Like I mentioned earlier, those fish were coming up to it. If you're fishing in 15 foot of water, things are happening a lot faster. But when you're throwing out there in 40 and 60, it just takes a while, and you can see it all kind of play out. So that was cool. I mean, the day I was fishing with Scott and he had the Lowrance, we were fishing pretty shallow water. We were fishing like 12 foot. So it was more of kind of see your bait coming back in versus seeing it fall. We were fishing kind of isolated targets. So I didn't get a chance to really play with the bait that much. I got to see stuff in the water, like a brush pile or a lay down or something. And what I've learned from talking to both of those guys is that the active target's got an 18-degree cone and the live scope's got that 20. So it's a little bit harder to find your bait on a cast with the Lowrance. It's just a little bit tighter cone, and you have to cast a little bit more accurately. And it's real important to have your pointer arrow, or basically your pointer arrow and the head of your trolling motor lined up with that transducer. So you know exactly where to cast. If it's off just a little bit, it's just going to make it that much more difficult. So that's one of the key things that I've learned from, when you set up that forward-facing sonar, is to make sure that everything is in line, and it'll just make it that much easier to find your bait. I know, Ron, you've had that active target for probably 5-6 months now. What do you think about it so far?
I've learned enough to know I've got a lot to learn. It is plug and play to some degree. Couple things for me, the way I fish, I'm going to have to get my transducer off of the trolling motor, because when you put it on spot lock, for the way I fish, then if you're wanting to look at something different, you kind of lose a lot of the capability of the active target or the Garmin, whichever one you use. So I'm in the process of trying to decide what mount. I'm going to have a motorized mount. Height Right has one. Cornfield Crappie has one. And I'm sure there's others, but I'm going to get mine on a separate motorized mount so that after I put it on spot lock or whatever I'm doing, I can scan that to wherever I want it. The guy from Bass Fishing Electronics, I think is the name, the place out east, I messaged him and asked him for his input.
Mm-hmm.
And he recommended the Cornfield Crappie one. Now, Edwin Evers just put a right height, and so did Jimmy Houston put a right height on their boat for theirs. The other thing I've learned that made a tremendous difference in my picture is, the front of every bass boat's got that downward bend. And so I've got mine on there, and there's these little notches where it says to put to adjust your transducer for forward or down imaging or perspective mode or whatever. And I wasn't really satisfied with my picture. And I was watching a couple videos. I think it was Bass Tank. But anyway, I had to kind of go off my own and to adjust for that bow offset, the downward angle of my boat, to really get that transducer square. And once I did that, it made a tremendous difference in the picture, and it helped in all facets with that, with both seeing my bait and actually what was beneath the boat was actually reading beneath the boat, whereas before it wasn't. So we'll say I'm 6 months in, and I got a long way to go to get where I'm good at it. Jay says, check out All Aboard Marine. I assume that's a motorized mount. So I will, Jay. Thank you.
Yeah, he says
that's going to be really important for me to get the most out of that forward-facing sonar, I think.
That's what's kept me really from going forward with it. I really like the 360 Mega from Humminbird. Just for that exact reason, you can see while you're spot locked. And if you're fishing, if you're target fishing like I do a lot offshore, I don't necessarily need to see all the fish that aren't biting. I'd like to just see the target that I'm casting at. So,
right. Yeah, and that's the other reason to get the whatever forward-facing sonar a guy uses. That's another reason to get that transducer off of the trolling motor, because it is a wonderful tool. It's almost just as important for pointing at an object that it is seeing fish. On Cedar, there's some grass-related fish, and there is now on Egypt, now that the grass is back in Egypt. And it's a wonderful tool for seeing weed edges. You can pick out brush piles. You can really, really narrow your cast down. You're much more efficient. But for it to get the full effect of that, you got to get it off the trolling motor.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good ideals in here about ways to rig up the live scope or the forward-facing transducer. I mean, anything from an old trolling motor to just mounting it on a pole so you can manually move it around. But we noticed that when we were at Norfolk, it was pretty windy, and it was hard to keep your bait in the cone. Your trolling motor is constantly making that adjustment, and it was tricky. It was difficult. So I would agree with you. I mean, that's got to be something that would drive you nuts if you have that technology and you're constantly.
Yeah, and the thing I'm learning is you don't want forward-facing sonar to inhibit anything that you're good at in fishing. What you want it to do is you want it to accent and help you improve at what you're good at. And what I've noticed is, sometimes you end up fishing just based on what you're looking at on the screen instead of fishing the way you should be for the season or where the fish are generally located. And the ability to marry those two things together is, I think the guys who are really good at it, they're good at enhancing the way they fish. They don't, they're not, they just don't see a blip on the screen and go just blindly chasing it.
So what you're saying is when the fish are in the grass, turn it off and don't be confused. I know you and I talked about that this weekend a little bit. But.
Well, I don't know if I'd turn it off. I've always got mine on. I don't have it on my John boat, so it's not a factor. I don't have it on my John boat, but on my big boat, I always, I'll have it. But on my big boat, I always have it on. But I've gotten better at just ignoring it when I'm not obsessed with it, and I want to keep it that way. And then I'll just slowly get better at it and add it, and it's really, I'm really looking forward to this winter when the majority of the fish get offshore in the shad and that A-rig and the spoon, and I'm really looking forward to that. And that'll be fun.
For sure.
Yeah.
I know you talk about graphs, and I know this is completely off the live scope topic, but one thing that I've noticed the last couple trips that I've made over to Cedar is I've shut my graphs off or did not even take them with me. And the success it's twofold for me. I don't have anything to look at. I catch myself looking at it down all the time and there's nothing there. There's the screen's turned off and I won't turn it on. But I had a plan and I stuck with my plan, and I did not, because if I have my graphs on and I see a fish out there in 12 foot of water while I'm fishing an edge, it's like, oh no, I'm going to go out here and pull out a little bit farther and try to catch those fish instead of focusing on the plan or the task at hand.
Yeah.
And the other part is when I got super, super shallow, I was catching fish. I think a lot of guys are not turning off their graphs from what I've noticed, and they're spooking those fish early.
Especially in my John boat, you really hear the pinging of the electronics, whether, whichever format you got on. And, just think about every boat anymore has that little pinging sound coming out of it. And they get wary to that. And there's a lot of times where those electronics being off will help you catch some fish. I agree 100%. I catch myself. I'll just be looking at side scan, and I've got it where on my front unit, everything's networked, so I can read my side scan off my back transducer, and I'll be going, fishing a spot, and I'll yell, "Dale, look at all those fish off out there in the middle of the lake," and and before you know it, you've wasted 20 minutes grabbing a rod out from under the deck, and those fish invariably hardly ever bite anyway if they're out there, just especially in the middle of the day. You're better off half the time just fishing. So I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, that pinging on an aluminum boat is intensified. It's a totally different thing. And another thing that with turning off your graphs, you got to make sure you stop your sonar if you do leave your graphs on, because just putting it in standby, you're still getting a ping. So you've actually got to manually go in there and stop sonar on your down scan and your 2D, or it's still down there pinging.
Yep.
Well, for me, I have to actually, you can do that. But for me, I forgot to turn off my box for like the first 30 minutes because I have an older Lowrance and I still have a structure scan box.
Oh, you got Gen 2 or whatever that is?
Yeah, I got Gen 2s. I got Gen 2 non-touches that I run my structure scan off of. And I have it on a manual switch. I don't have the wake up. There's wake up wires. And later on this year, I'm going to do a video on how I have my boat set up on old technology, if you will. You don't have to have the latest and greatest to see fish and catch fish.
No, not at all.
You just have to have everything wired correctly, set correctly, and to see the best picture. But anyway, I have mine set up where everything's got a power switch to it, because there's a little bit of draw, even though that it's not, your graphs aren't turned on or that box isn't turned on if you don't have it switched. So if that boat sits, it'll draw.
I saw the negative effects of a graph that's not getting the proper amount of power on my day one at Norfolk on the regional. The guy I drew, Tim, great boater, but he'd been having problems with his graphs. He was running 2 12s. There were 2 Lowrance 12s on the bow, maybe a 12 and a 10. I'm not sure. But anyway, he had 2 graphs right there. And every time he would start his boat, one of the graphs would turn off.
Yep.
Yeah. And he thought it was the batteries. So he went and replaced the batteries. He was running 31 series batteries. We had a conversation about this. And I said, well, you don't have enough power. You don't have big enough wire running to your graphs. He said it's all ran to the console there, and it's kind of tied in with a bunch of other stuff. And it was crazy. Every time the live well pump would kick on, the recirc pump would kick on, his downscan would kind of start flickering. It was just kind of staticky and flickering. And then after about, 4 or 5 hours into the tournament, he was leaving one graph on for me. It just died. It wouldn't come back on. And his motor started up fine. We've been fishing this point for 4 hours, all in the trolling motor. And as it got about an hour away from when we needed to run back in, I'm like, dude, you need to fire your motor up just to make sure, because the graph turned off. Everything was twitching. And I thought, your battery is getting weak. But he turned it over and it turned over fine. So he just didn't have enough wire, the proper setup to get juice to his graph.
Gauge of his wire.
The gauge of his wire. You just need to run 8 gauge wire from your battery to your graph, and you won't have any problem.
Yep.
Super important.
If you guys ever have any questions, you guys can message me. I've rigged up quite a few boats for electronics. So, and I do it from start to finish, like no wires in a John boat to fully wired, fully functional. Everything's protected and paneled. So,
Blue Cat has a question here. Jason Husky, if you're still on here, what do you think about forward facing sonar in 3 foot or less? From what I've heard, it's almost useless that shallow. But I don't know. Obviously don't have it. I haven't had a chance to play around with it.
The couple of things that I've heard, and I'm kind of like Gabe. I haven't seen it firsthand, but if we're just talking forward facing sonar in general, the Humminbird 360 Mega is the one that I've heard that excels in shallower water, because it's not. I guess my only theory is because it's not live. It's just it's a side imaging picture essentially of the front, sides, 360 degrees around your boat. So, Ron, you may have a little more insight on that.
Yeah. I'll answer Stephanie's question real quick. The active target is 18 degrees, whereas the Garmin is 20 degrees. But the shallow water, and I'm learning, so I may come on here 6 months and say, forget what I said. But perspective mode, you got it down and forward, and then there's perspective mode where you turn the transducer basically sideways, and it just shoots out like this. I would think that might be helpful in shallow water, or maybe of some use anyway in shallow water, in perspective mode. And Garmin has the same thing. They call it something different, side view or something. And that may be of some help. But I would say the shallower you get, in general, the less effective forward-facing sonar would be in general. There's always going to be an exception or a situation, but I would say the deeper water is, where it's really going to have a chance to help you more.
Well, typically when you're fishing shallow water, you're not looking directly at fish. I mean, you think about your 2D sonar, it's pretty well ineffective in in my opinion, it's 5 foot or less, unless I'm looking for a channel or something like that.
Right.
Ditch. But for me, I might as well just turn it off if I'm in 4 or 5 foot or less to water.
I'm the same way. I'm fishing something visual, or I'm fishing a watercolor situation, or it's not something where I'm relying on my electronics most of the time. If anything, I'm looking at water temperature in the spring or fall.
Well, I was going to say water temperature or my map, and I'm looking at a target because the water's so muddy that I can't see that stump that's out there in the lake.
Right.
Yeah. Jason, we were asking about, what we were just talking about was active target in 3 foot of water or less. How does it perform? James says he's down at Lake of the Ozarks and he's had live scope for 3 years. He's pretty good at it. So if you want free lessons, PM me. I may hit you up, man.
Me too.
What you do?
We're all learning this stuff. Is the technology is moving so fast. It's even moving faster than a lot of the dealers. They can't. A lot of times the customers know more than what the dealers do.
Right.
At least for locally, anyway.
I know. I was listening to, I don't remember what podcast it was the other day, and they were just talking about taking a lesson and expediting the learning curve, essentially going out with someone like James, or that would be a great service with James, but paying somebody $300-400 for a half-day trip just to have them set up your system, get all the settings, get a baseline, and be able to go up and down from there and know what you're looking at. I mean, that was the learning curve that I had with just thinking back to side scan. That learning curve it seemed like forever, but for me, it was trial and error on my own, watching videos, reading as much as I could, talking to folks that have had it for a while. Mm-hmm. But once I got it down, and now I know if the water is this certain color or clarity, or there's an algae bloom, I know how to adjust my settings to maximize my picture for the color of water that I have, and not get frustrated when there's a algae bloom in, April or May and you can't see anything. There's nothing you can do about it but adjust your settings to get the best picture at that time. Before, it was like, well, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? Mm-hmm. Knowing your water conditions and knowing what you got, it's makes a big difference. And taking those lessons, if you got somebody that's close or is willing to take you out, that's, I think, the best way to learn.
Absolutely.
Well, Jackson, one of the guys that I stayed with down there on Norfolk, I fished with him in practice on day 2, our second day of practice. He's the guy that had the live scope. He did exactly what you said. He went out with the guy, I can't remember the guy's name, but they took his boat out and he set everything up. And this guy was dialed in. They were scanning. I think they went down to Pickwick, and the guy was pointing out dots. He was talking about the different size dots and what they represented different size fish, obviously, but he was so good that he could tell you what that fish weighed. He said, that's a 6-pounder right there. Jackson was telling me the story. He's like, that's a 6-pounder. They scanned it, went around, caught the fish. It weighed like 604. So there's people that are that good that they can tell about what a fish weighs. Well, and that's the guy you want to jump in the boat with for 6 hours and have them set up your stuff, because you're going to be your stuff's going to be dialed in, and you just got to make a little bit of tweaking here and there. Okay. So
I've had guys at Kentucky Lake, they'll scan a school back when Kentucky was good and say, well, I wasn't even going to fish these. These are all 2-pounders. Mm-hmm. And just to know by looking at that. So that's, I don't have any disbelief that somebody could do that on live scope. I mean, you look at the crappie guys and that they're chasing around individual fish, going after one crappie because they know that's a 2.5 to 3 pound crappie.
Yeah. And you can tell just from that little bit of time that I spent with Jackson, we could tell when we were around some of the bigger spots. They were just a little bit bigger, and they just, you could kind of, it's hard to explain.
You kind of see them swim. You can. A bigger fish, you can see them swim. You can literally see the fin movements.
Yeah, exactly. It was a difference. I mean, I could just, after a little bit of watching it, I'm like, oh, that's a little bit bigger fish for sure. Yeah. And then we would see stripers, and of course, they're instead of them being round, they were more oblong, because obviously they're just a little bit longer fish. But you could see stuff like that. Catfish, we could see catfish. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty cool. Jay says that Graphmasters on Lake of the Ozarks or Table Rock will do on-the-water clinics with Hummingbird. Group of guys, Rick Fishbeck, Terry Blankenship, Chad Deaver, Brent Algio, and Tom Lloyd. So that's somebody to reach out to. I've heard a lot of good things about Graphmaster. So that's definitely an option. There's a few guys down at Kentucky Lake. I think the guy Jackson hooked up with was on Kentucky Lake, and I think they went down to Pickwick because there's no fish on the ledges in Kentucky Lake. So it was like a waste of time. Don't go to a lake that doesn't have fish on the ledge if you want to learn how to scan ledges, because it's useless. But yeah, you know, I thought, even though we have aluminum boats, I still thought, I'm like, I wonder if those guys could do the same thing in an aluminum boat. I guess they can, right?
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I'm sure there's probably a few different settings, maybe, since our boat is, I mean, it's got to be a little bit different than glass boat, you know? Maybe
I
not.
guess. I don't know. I ran pretty well the same settings when I had my fiberglass boat.
Okay.
So.
I guess I do too on my Ranger, now that I'm thinking about it.
But.
Well, cool. So we were going to talk a little bit about some of the techniques that have been working around here, and we kind of picked out a couple baits, a Buzzbait, and then we were going to talk about jigs. And the reason I decided on the Buzzbait was because I've been catching a few fish on the Buzzbait lately. I had a really good day over there at Pyramid State Park. I think it was last week or the week before. Have a video out sometime. I don't know. It's got a lot of fish catches. It's going to be a lot of editing, but they wouldn't hit like a walking bait. And I kind of wrote it off as not being a topwater day, and it just kept eating on me. I was catching a few fish on a shaky head, and it kept eating on me. And finally I picked up that Buzzbait that I had laying on the deck, and I made a couple casts, and that's what they wanted. So, you know, even though the fish are looking up, doesn't mean that they're just going to take the first bait that you throw at them. Just like the same thing when they're on the bottom, they may not hit a jig, but they'll hit a shaky head or you know, a Texas rig worm. You know, with the top water, just like anything, you got to change it up and figure out what the fish want for that day. But the Buzzbait right now is getting prime. And
there we go.
Let's just talk about a couple different like ideals or ways to throw things to put on a Buzzbait as far as trailers. I mean, a Buzzbait traditionally comes out with a skirt, right? Everybody knows that. It's got, hand me that black one over there. Yeah. So this is a really cool Buzzbait. This is a mega big old Buzzbait. It's got the 4 blades on there. You can slow roll it. But most Buzzbaits are going to have a skirt like that. And it was probably first time I noted that I started seeing people taking the skirts off was probably 5 or 6 years ago, and then they would put like a horny toad. So you've got Buzzbait, no skirt, horny toad. Now, some of the advantages of this, obviously, you got a flat bottom, you can skip it. It's really hard to skip a Buzzbait with a skirt, but with a toad on there, you can skip it up under docks, up under laydowns a whole lot better. Mm-hmm. I think it gives the fish something to kind of target on, you know, something to kind of key in on, and they're seeing all this going. Like a skirt doesn't have a lot of action, you know. This has a lot more action. It's kind of a bold presence, and it's a target thing. You know, they come up.
It's more of a solid silhouette.
It's more of a solid silhouette. Yeah, exactly. Thanks. But you can also do some other modifications. Something I was playing around with the other day was just putting a Rage Menace on there, which was working really good. A little bit smaller profile, and it kind of mimics some of the smaller bait fish that you see right now. You know, there's a lot of small bait fish in the water. We were seeing them at Norfolk. We were seeing them at Lake of the Ozarks. That toad might be just a little bit too big. I mean, they'll still hit it, don't get me wrong, but if you're kind of trying to match the profile of some of these smaller bait fish, something like a 1/4 ounce. This is a 1/4 ounce Cumberland Pro Buzzbait. I actually got a white blade. I've been playing around with that white blade, and I'm kind of digging the white blade. But a Menace on there. The thing I don't like about the Menace that I've found is this little tail will get caught on the hook a lot. It's kind of a pain in the butt. About every 10th cast or something, one of these little flippers will come up and grab that hook, and then it's, you know, you've got a wasted cast. But before I had put this on there, I put a little swim bait on there. I think I laid a little swim bait around here somewhere. But something like just a little 3-inch Kitech or the Little Dipper instead of the Menace. And they were killing this thing. I haven't put that one on there. Yeah. Something like that too, a little grub. But I think something that has a single tail like this, a single paddle tail or a single grub tail, is a lot more efficient. You're not gonna have to deal with one of these legs reaching up there and grabbing the hook. The downside is these things tear up really easy. Yeah. I mean, I was getting like 3 or 4 fish out of one swim bait. and I caught a bunch of fish on a single menace. Never did go through one menace. For some reason, it was holding up.
And I found it with a horny tail, you can catch
a bunch
because they're just and hold that back up here. I want to show this. So flip it over. So you see how that tail like falls on the menace. I was doing the same thing, but I was throwing a like a Z crawl, Zoom Z crawl, and it has the same problem. But you can see how those legs are a little stiffer and they don't fold over as bad. So that's the
reason, right?
I think if you just find the right soft plastic, whatever you're going to use, it has a little more, I don't know,
it's a little more rigid, or
rigid. That's the word I was looking for. A little more rigid tails.
One thing too, when you were putting that swim bait on the Buzzbait, one thing I'll do is I'll take the shaft of the Buzzbait and bend it down and put an L in it. That first Buzzbait you held up was bent that way. Yes, exactly. When you bend your Buzzbait that way, when you put that swim bait on there, and it, I don't know, I just hook up better sometimes that way. I'll do that too with the skirt. We'll take an old lunker lure and bend it that way. And if there, a lot of times, if you're getting short strikes, I don't like trailer hooks. I mean, I'll use one whenever I have to, but a lot of times if you're getting short strikes on a Buzzbait, you can modify the arm of the Buzzbait that way, and that'll oftentimes solve your problem.
Really?
Yep.
Good idea.
So that bent in that shaft is going to get that hook down lower in the water.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
Yep, just a little bit.
Yep.
One thing that I'm not going to mess with Gabe's bait here.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
A lot of times what I'll do is I'll push that.
These are display models.
I'll push that horny toad up over the head. That way, and it just seems like it skips better when you have that bait all the way over the lead head, because you're just having plastic up there at that point. I don't know. That's something that I do. And then I always gob it with super glue just so it doesn't pull off.
Yeah. And if you're casting, like if you're casting to rocks, a lot of times these fish will get up real tight to rock. And if you've got that horny tail pulled up all the way over the head, you're not going to jack up the head of your Buzzbait. It's going to bounce off a little bit easier. It's going to be quieter probably when it hits the rocks.
Yeah.
I mean, not that a Buzzbait is loud by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. The other thing you can do too, a little tidbit, when you're throwing a Buzzbait, you know when one sounds right and when one doesn't. That squeal or whatever that is.
Yep.
Take a pair of pliers. If it's not squealing the way you want it, take a pair of pliers and squeeze that grommet that holds the blade on there. Yeah, that back grommet. Take a pair of pliers of that and squeeze it. And that will make a tremendous difference in the sound that the Buzzbait gives. An old Buzzbait's always better than a new one because of the sound. But squeezing that grommet with a pair of pliers can drastically change the way that bait sounds.
Have you ever filed one down, like the face of it?
Yeah, a little bit. Yep.
Just give a little different sound.
Yeah, exactly. Hamilton.
Hashtag Coach Ron.
Yeah.
Uncle Ron to Coach Ron.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Buzzbait, so let's talk about like sizes of Buzzbait: a 1/4 ounce, 3/8, 1/2 ounce. What do you start out with? How do you make adjustments?
I've made the mistake. I don't know how many times of buying 1/2 ounce Buzzbaits. I'm sure that there's a time and a place for them, but they're not in my tackle box. I just got to burn it way too fast to keep it up. It just doesn't. A 1/2 ounce Buzzbait does not do me any good. I'm a 1/4 to 3/8, and 1/4 is my go-to usually, because I'm putting a piece of plastic on it, or I'm putting something heavy on it. Usually, I don't throw a lot of skirted Buzzbaits anymore, so I like that 1/4, because if I'm going to have that extra weight, it's going to be in the plastic. And if I'm going to throw a skirted, I'm going to throw a 3/8.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of water temperature oftentimes will determine for me the size of the Buzzbait I throw. They'll bite a Buzzbait in 48 to high 40s early in the spring, believe it or not. And you guys have seen those little tiny Buzzbaits a lot of companies make.
Like those 1/8 ounce bladed Strike King.
Early in the year or even late in the fall when you got to really sometimes work one slow or they want a small profile. Sometimes that'll be a time I throw a light one. Middle of the summer, if they're really busting it and you don't have to be too concerned, then I'll throw a bigger buzzbait just because I can throw it further and just work it back to the boat however as fast as I want. So kind of water temperature sometimes can dictate your presentation with that buzzbait, and that buzzbait works in a lot colder water than people realize. There's been a couple Bassmaster tournaments won on a buzzbait when it's snowing, believe it or not.
Yeah.
You throw yours on braid or mono fluorocarbon?
Fluoro.
Okay.
Fluoro. Yeah.
Same.
I bounced around with that, and I listened to Gerald Swindle talk about a buzzbait, and he did good this year in one. I can't remember if they were at Pickwick or I don't remember what tournament it was. But anyway, he gave us
really Henry's.
Yeah, he gave us. They were fishing at Water Willow with the buzzbait.
Yep.
And he just said he's been back and forth, and he just puts 20-pound fluoro on it and forgets it, and he does just fine. And I kind of
comment to that was my line's never touching the water, so what's it matter?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So,
and for me, because I used to throw braid on it, and I think you throw braid on yours, but I'm a jerker, and when one blows up on it,
yeah, it's hard to sit still when they come up on it.
And I think it's in my mind because that fluorocarbon gives me just a little bit extra time.
Yeah,
for them to get it. With braid, when they blow up on it, I jerk.
Yeah, some guys can use braid and it works, and if you use braid and it works, don't switch. It's not a lot of these techniques. It's what works for you, and if braid works for you, don't switch. But for me, it's just easier. I've got, I don't have to re-spool a bunch of rods and reels if I'm buzzbait fishing. Then you know what I mean. So
right, 100%.
Yeah, you're right. That's the pain of having braid. It's kind of limits what you can do with the rod. I got one of the rods that I got from you that actually maybe I got this one from Jerry. I don't know. I bought a couple of those Falcon Carriers, which man, those are really sweet rods. But it's a softer. It's a medium heavy, but it's got a really soft tip.
Yep.
So I think that's key with the buzzbait. Whether you throw it on braid or fluoro or mono, you want kind of a soft tip to let that fish suck it in and get that bait before you set the hook. And
it's going to help with that skipping if you got a horny toad on it, and it's going to get you when you're fishing that water willow, especially, you can get it into a really, really tight area. You can kind of get it up underneath there and hit that one little hole that he's
more accurate cast with that softer tip.
Yeah.
And so like 30 to 40 pound braid is what I've been always throwing on the buzzbait. But man, you're with that braid, you do have to have the right rod.
You got to have some give somewhere.
It's more critical.
Your line, your rod. Yeah, you got to have some give.
Yeah, and then 6-4-7-1 gear ratio, something like that. Just
usually a 7 for me.
Yeah, and that's really about it. I'm a 1/4 ounce to 3/8 ounce most of the time too. I've got some halves, and they're fine. A lot of the halves have a bigger blade on them, like something like this Omega. This has actually got it's a pretty unique blade design. It's 2 blades on there, and they pivot, so it's really 4 blades. But this is made. It's really cupped. I don't know if you can see the cup angle on that.
It's got a lot of lift on it.
It's got a lot of lift, and this is this is like probably a 1/2 ounce buzzbait, but you can reel it really slow. It's got 4 blades, and they're really heavily cupped. So this is made for getting up and just kind of slow rolling really slow. So there are some bigger buzzbaits that you can reel at a slower pace. But I think time, day in and day out, like a 1/2 or a 3/8 or a 1/4 ounce is probably the best one to throw. I like that 1/4 ounce. You can wing it around stuff a lot tighter. It seems like you're more accurate with it.
Yep.
It lands a lot softer. I think it attracts, little fish and bigger fish.
I've caught some giants. Ron was talking about that little 1/8 ounce buzzbait, that little bitty guy. I've caught some absolute studs on that little thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's after you catch one big one, it's pretty much a 1-fish buzzbait at that point because they just mash it, tear it all to heck. So
yeah. And then Colors.
I'm black and white.
You're
Me
black
too.
and white. Yep.
Me
I
too.
don't. I'll throw black. The only thing that I'll switch up is like I'll throw a black blade with a black buzzbait, and usually I'm either a silver or a gold blade on a white buzzbait, but I don't get too technical with my colors. So I think honestly, it's just a profile thing for them.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Black or white, and if they're not hitting black or white, they're probably not hitting a buzzbait.
Yep.
Yeah,
I would agree.
It's some variation of the two. It may have a little chartreuse in it, but it's whatever I could find that was closest to black or closest to white.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's just kind of like frog fishing. That black seems to be.
I noticed that this 2 weeks ago.
Overcast
day, and I was throwing a lighter color bellied frog, and I was not getting bit for the first 30 minutes. And I was by myself, so you got a lot of time to think. And I just put that frog up to the sky, and I looked at it. I was like, "Yep, they can't see it." I was telling you this. I literally made the change to a black frog, and the first cast of the black frog, I caught a 4.5. Mm-hmm. So, was it in my head? Did I hit the right area at the right time? But then I went down that stretch and I caught 6 over 18. So
they wanted a black frog.
They wanted a black frog, and I wasn't switching from the black frog, and I made sure I had plenty of black frogs when I went home. So,
yep. Sometimes it's just that simple. We've seen it with, a worm or a jig, where just a color change makes such a big difference, and it's the same way with topwater.
A lot of my baits, when I was growing up, I had to have every color of every,
of course,
soft plastic that came out. Now I look at my box and it's green and black, it's brown and black. That's it. That's the only 2 colors that are in my box anymore, or some variation of it. Again, if I couldn't find that green color, I got a different green color, and it was just because the store was out. But I'm pretty simple when it comes to colors.
Are you tying buzzbaits onto the antenna of your new truck, Ron?
No, that's an old trick there. It's a lot easier. Just take pliers to the rivet, but no.
I remember doing that and watching my buzzbait go flying down the highway.
Yeah.
Line snapped on it, and there it went.
I got too much money wrapped up in my Dodge Ram to be bouncing buzzbaits off the windshield.
You do have a good looking truck, bud. That was the first time I saw it this weekend. I knew it was yours.
Thank you.
That is a good looking truck.
I'm surprised I found a place to park. I got lucky. Someone left that front corner wide open. I was like, well, I'm taking it.
Yeah. I don't blame you on that one. That's easy in and out right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeremiah touched on a good point about the head design on a jerkbait, or not a jerkbait, a buzzbait. He says the Jacob Willer buzzbait has a great squeak and it planes out instantly. It can work them around super slow retrieve. That the head design is kind of something that I've noticed. You want something that's got a little bit of a flat bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Got a little bit of a flat bottom. It's going to get out of the water a lot better. It does make it's not much surface area, but it makes a difference.
Well, so what I found on the flat bottom versus what I don't know if we have one here that's got a keel on it. Like that one's got a little bit of a keel on it. It's actually got a lot of a keel on it. So that triangle head. For what I found, if that buzzbait's out of tune, that keel will just amplify it, and it'll run.
It's like a little rudder.
Yeah, it'll run like 4 foot right or 4 foot left. If it's got that flat bottom, it's still going to run left or right, but it's not going to be as exaggerated. Now, there's instances like it was Johnny McCombs who won an FLW, I believe, last year, the year before. He actually had a couple he builds his own buzzbaits, and he had the blades turn the other way than a normal buzzbait, so it would run the opposite direction. He was fishing down a bank into the wind, and that way that buzzbait ran into the bank versus running out to open water. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was really interesting. Right. I'm not that technical with my buzzbait, but
a lot of guys will tune them to run into docks like that. But back to
Gerald down the riprap
or down the riprap, yeah. But like Gerald Swindle was talking about that same, referencing that same video you were talking about, Ron, is he said he tunes his bait to run straight because you can manipulate where that buzzbait is running by moving your rod. You know, if you want to encourage your bait to run to the left, just put your rod tip way out there, or to the right, just put your rod tip way out there. So that's one way to do it. And another way of doing it is to actually, bend that bait to where it runs left or right. So here's a good question, man. We haven't got a lot of questions. If you guys have anything to add about Buzzbaits, go ahead and chime in if you have any questions or anything we missed. This is an open forum where we're all learning about this together. But John says, if a fish blows up on it and misses it, do you go back with the Buzzbait or do you have a follow-up bait like a soft bait? Jonathan, what do you think? You just keep on checking or you stop?
Just depends on the day. Depends on how bad I need a fish. If they're blowing up on a Buzzbait and I'm catching fish on a Buzzbait, I'm not stopping for one blow up.
You're covering water.
I'm moving down the bank.
Oh, the goddamn!
You got a possum back there?
No. First group of snow geese just went over the house.
Speckle bellies. They're speckle bellies.
Specks?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure these were snows. I've killed a bunch of them.
I know. They're coming over here too. My buddy texted me a while ago. He's sitting outside on his front porch and
really
specks over here.
That's the first. Either way, it's the first ones I've heard all year.
Yep, that's what he texted me about 5:30 and said group of specks just flew over the house about 200 foot high.
There's some cold weather somewhere then.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry for the interruption.
No.
It's a fishing show, Ron. Come on.
I thought maybe you had like a Sasquatch or something at your back door that was kind of peeking in. You saw some red eyes.
I actually had a story tonight on that.
You did.
Yes. And now we're gonna just blow up the comment.
We can get into a story.
It wasn't even a Sasquatch. It just so get off the Buzzbait here for just a second. Saturday morning we wake up for the tournament, right? I got a little over an hour drive. Well, I had went take my shower in the morning, woke up, morning constitutional, the whole deal. I walked out to the kitchen and I keep.
No wonder you finished second. You took a shower.
That's right. I always take a shower.
So fresh and so clean.
I don't drink coffee in the morning, so that's my coffee.
Oh, well.
I know.
Remember?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was in the kitchen, trying to be super quiet. Two boys asleep, and the wife's trying to sleep. And I'm walking around the house, and I keep hearing this like squealing. What in the world is that? Of course, first thing that I think of is something's outside, Sasquatch, whatever. But I walked out to the garage, and I hear it. I shut the door, and I still hear it. Well, apparently, I stuck my phone in my pocket. And I didn't lock it, and it was playing some video off of Facebook. And there was just like this faint squeal, like every 30 seconds was on a loop. And it was in my pocket doing that. It freaked me out for about 5 minutes. I couldn't figure out what it was. I kept walking inside the house, walking around the house, trying to figure out what this squealing was outside. It was in my dang pocket. So,
yeah, I've had that. I've had same thing will happen when somebody is watching something in the other room and it's just
faint enough that you can hear it. Yeah,
you're like what in the world is that noise? Yeah. Is it the dryer going on?
You start freaking out because we're all homeowners and we're like, what broke in my house?
That's true. That's very true. We had they're putting in a sewer system down here. The sewer system. We have just a lagoon down here and we're going on the county sewer system. So seems like every month they bust the water line. And when that happens, it starts. Well, first of all, if you're using the faucet, it just scares the crap out of you, and then all your pipes are losing water pressure, so they're gurgling. And it happened to me a while back. I immediately went downstairs and checked, looking for something dripping through the drop ceiling. But it happened the other day while I was at Norfolk, and Crystal called me, and she's like, "I think something's wrong."
Now they're specs.
So
you hear him now?
Yeah, I can hear him just sitting here.
But anyway, yeah. Weird sounds from another room or from your pocket or alarming. We got a bunch of people guessing. You got the number? What is it? Okay.
You want me to tell you?
Tell me out loud. Here's a good tip. Well, back to that question we just had about following up after a buzzbait.
Yeah, a jigger, some sort of bait to pitch in. Yeah, I do a lot of times.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like Jonathan. I'm kind of covering water, I think. If I'm throwing something and...
Now, if I'm just getting, again, kind of backtrack to what I said, if I'm just getting a few bites on it and I'm not catching a lot of fish on it, I may throw back in there. But at the same time, if I'm not getting a lot of bites on a buzzbait, they're not on a buzzbait, I don't want to force feed them a buzzbait.
Well, it's kind of like it depends on what kind of fishing you're doing that day. If you're just kind of you're trying a couple things, you're sampling, and yeah, you make a couple casts with a buzzbait, you get one to blow up, and you've been fishing kind of slow, picking things apart. Yeah, then I will pick up something else. But if I'm fishing a buzzbait where I'm covering water and I get one to blow up, I usually just make another cast and try to, get that fish to trigger again since he's activated, and I just keep on going.
Mm-hmm.
I may flip once, but that's it. I'm not going to slow down and try a bunch of stuff.
I think a lot of it depends on the time of the year and what the area I'm fishing. Like a wacky worm or a flick shake would be really good to pitch in there right behind that.
Yeah, I agree.
Just because it's
that fish is probably looking up.
Yep.
He blew up and he's sitting
He's
there.
not looking for something to fall down. He's looking for something that's coming from the surface kind of slow. So
I want to scan through these numbers and see if anybody won. What's the over and under on Stephanie winning tonight?
Pretty damn good.
Yeah. Stephanie, Ron she's won 3 or 4 times, and we haven't been doing this giveaway very often. So she's dialed in on the right number. She's got a system strategy or something.
Brent Anderson figured out her system last week.
Yeah, he did.
I like what Todd's doing right there. Todd just guesses right after what Stephanie guesses. That's a good philosophy.
That's like a guy I work with. He's got the same day off as me, and I always go check the vacation board and see what days he took off because they almost always line up with a holiday. So I just go over there and check out what he takes off, and it seems to work out pretty good for me. This is turning into like Price is Right, where everybody guesses $1.
What's your range for your numbers when you do this?
Between 1 and 200.
1 and 200.
So,
well, Stephanie's on here. About every third person on here guessing is Stephanie.
She's a fast typer.
Yeah.
No wonder she wins. She types faster than everybody else.
Oh, here's a good question. What range does a fish travel from a blow up?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
I don't know. I got a buddy that's fished table rock and
active target will tell you.
What's that?
Active target would tell you.
Yeah, that's for sure. But he fished table rock when it was super clear, and he said he's watched them come up from 15 or 20 feet to blow up on a top water. Now it's over open water.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm sure, Ron, you fish cedar and grass lakes enough. You've seen bushes shake and grass mats move to come after a topwater bait.
Yeah, they'll move. It's depending on their mood. I've seen them move 5 or 6 feet, and you see that wake coming. It's like, oh my God, those are usually the ones I miss because I freak out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because as soon as the surface of the water breaks, you're jerking.
Yeah. It's just like, what just happened, Oh, but, yeah. It's, so yeah, it's fun when they do that.
Well, I saw those fish last weekend at Norfolk. We were in 60, throwing up in 40, and those fish, well, actually we were in 60 throwing, and those fish were meeting it at about the 40-foot mark. So they were swimming up about 20 feet from the bottom to get it. And they were coming towards it as it was falling. So they saw it. They saw it way before that.
Right.
And the water visibility was about 12 to 15 foot.
I think that's what active target live scope will teach you is how far fish will move
for a bait.
Or how they react to a bait, or it's going to teach us a lot about fish behavior, just being able to observe what they do or what they don't do.
Right. It's the top one. This one.
Oh, it's that one?
Yeah.
Oh, I've been looking at the wrong one.
I'm sorry.
I thought we had a winner. I was looking at the wrong number. He's got 2 numbers on there for.
Well, it was last week.
Is that last week?
That was Stephanie that won. Yeah.
Jeez. So now I got to go back through all these.
Have you got a winner yet?
Almost. He has 2 numbers written down. I was looking at the wrong number. So now I've got to go through.
Usually that's my job.
Okay. Well, you keep looking too.
All right.
While you guys are looking, has anyone, fall fishing is an interesting time of year because the fish do a lot of different things all at the same time. You have one group of fish go shallow. But with fall, you get that thermocline like on our local lakes. And let's say cedar, the I don't know, thermocline was at 15 or 16 feet or whatever, roughly.
Was it set up this weekend?
The thermocline?
Yeah.
Well, this summer it was at 15 or 16 or whatever. Okay. And then as that water cools, you know, it gets more dense and it sinks and it slowly starts to mix. And so a lot of the times the thermocline will go away, or you get fall turnover, but you always get on our area lakes, there's always a population of fish that when that thermocline drops from underneath them, not all the fish go up shallow. Some of them just kind of follow that thing down. And one of my old mentors, Dean Clark, he just loved to fish that way because, you know, he just let everyone go up in the creek and have their fun. And he had some stumps and stuff out in that 20 to 30 foot range that some fish do go to, if there's food down there.
And find the bigger fish do that.
Some it's not that's kind of what I was getting at. There's some that do that. It's not like you're going to go find a school of them usually, but on cedar, you're looking for 2 bites, right?
Right.
You know, and so you guys said you were going to talk about jig fishing a little bit. You know, it's kind of that 3/4 ounce football head jig, or just a 3/4 ounce, you know, heavy jig, whatever. Carolina rig. You know, that's kind of some of that stuff might be starting to play a little bit, and it's interesting trying to decide in a tournament setting which direction to go. You know,
yeah, and honestly, that's what, for kind of a little bit of a recap onto that. That's why I did not turn my graphs on over the weekend, because I had the weekend before I had found a population of fish. I think Ron's frozen. He's just really still.
He's really still.
He's
like a ninja, stealthy. He's probably trying to sneak up on that Sasquatch or catch one of those specks.
That's right.
That's right.
There he is. He's back.
I could hear you.
Okay.
You're good.
We weren't talking bad about you, so.
No, I just fishing slow.
It's fishing slow. It's like cast.
Yeah.
Just hold it.
Let
the bait work the bait.
I had found 2 different groups of fish in the last month, and I found a solid group of fish out deep, and they were in the 4 to 6 pound range. And I found a group of fish up shallow, but the shallower fish were easy and more prevalent in an area. So that's where I just chose to go after the numbers versus the big ones, because I know the big ones could vanish like that, because there was only, you catch one off of a spot, and it would it'd either be a really, really good one, or it'd be a slot fish.
Or a dink, believe it or not.
Yeah.
You can catch them really, I don't know what they're doing out there, but I caught some 10 inchers out in 25 feet of water this last week.
Really?
Yeah, which I can't explain that.
Usually at cedar, if we're fishing deep, deep is relative, and it's relative to the thermocline over there. And, early summer is, 17, 18 is about as deep as you can go when the thermocline starts to set up. Well, that day that I was over, the thermocline had disappeared. It was down to like 22, 23. And I was fishing that edge of the thermocline, and I was just jacking some big ones. But it was just here and there. You'd have to go and you'd search and search and search and find that one piece of structure, and there he would be every time. But I decided to go shallow this weekend. So
we got a winner. Tom Mix.
Hey.
Congratulations.
What old Tom win?
He won some Cumberland Pro jigs. He won some Hawgz Custom Baits soft plastics, and he also won some Star jigs. We had one of the viewers, when we had Brent Anderson on, I think it was last week, he makes these jigs called Star jigs. He sent me and Jonathan some for a giveaway. So that was really nice of him. Tom, hit me up Instagram or Facebook and send me your shipping information, and I will get all that stuff out this week. I've got a couple other packages that I've got to get out. Somebody was saying they saw on Live Scope that when a fish blows up on a bait, they go right back to the bottom. That was James. He says on Live Scope, they tend to go back to the bottom usually. So that's good information.
Okay.
Let's see. Let me just get down to the bottom of these comments. We got a lot of numbers. Make sure there's no questions, and we can touch on jigs real quick before we.
We can do my recap real quick while you're doing that.
Yeah, go ahead.
My weekend. So, as Ron alluded to earlier, finished second in a USA Bassin over at Cedar this past weekend, and it seemed like it was a stingy, from everybody that I talked to in the parking lot, stingy USA Bassin tournament over there for fall fishing. We actually, like I said, I'd found a group of fish the weekend before, but it was raining. But I had quite a few fish in the area, and it was a very, very small niche area of the lake. Made that, I actually said it was probably a 200-yard stretch of fish that I had found bait that was actually in the grass, which, as Ron knows, that was like finding a needle in a haystack over there. There wasn't much bait in the grass.
There's not as much bait in the lake, period, this year.
True. But when you find the mat that was popping, you kind of hang out there for a while. And that was my game plan. I fished with my brother, and I told him that I said, we're either going to be heroes or zeros today. We're going to pretty well stay in the same spot. And that's not typically what I do in the fall. I'm usually covering as much water as I possibly can in the fall. But I decided to stick it out because I knew there was good fish in the area. I had caught one that was almost 5 the weekend before, missed one that was pushing 6.5, 7, saw her come completely out of the water. So I knew that there was good fish in the area, and I figured I was either going to catch them one way or the other. And I threw a frog pretty well all day and caught him on a frog. So it was, like I said, we ended up leaving that area, started the tournament at 7. It was a boat race everywhere. It seemed
20 mile an hour boat race.
Yeah. It wasn't a fast boat race. I never said that. It's usually like this.
Yeah.
But we got to the spot. We didn't have to fight anybody off for the spot, but it was we got down there, and I had my 2 overs at 7:15. So it happened really, really quick. Ended up catching quite a few that day, or Saturday, I guess it was.
Todd wants to know what weight won it and what the big bass was.
I don't know what big bass was. I think Ron,
five Doan and Powers won and had big bass, and they had
it's like 534 maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say 5.4, but
if you go to USA,
they only had 11 and 3/4 or something, right?
Well, I can tell you exactly what they had. They had 1190.
Okay.
And I had 1189.
Ooh.
But I had a dead fish penalty. I had a dead fish penalty, so it wasn't as close as it seemed with after my penalty. So
yeah.
But
at least it didn't cost you from winning it, though.
That's what I told my brother. I said it did not cost us the winning check, because that would have made me more upset about losing that fish.
Yeah. You had Rich at Frog.
Yeah. We actually, believe it or not, we started off shallow, and I'd found some fish, not that quality, but I'd found some fish, and we went to our shallow spot, and they didn't bite. So I was like, that's all the excuse I needed to go back out where I like to be anyway. And then we grounded out there, and we had our overs, but our overs were just 18 inches, which, as you know, out there doesn't get you anything. So we got an attaboy at the weigh-in, but we caught our fish in like 20 feet of water. So they're everywhere and they're nowhere.
Yeah, I saw you milling around out there.
Yeah, I saw you go by.
It seems like you scratch up a couple fish out there, out deeper, no matter what.
Did you catch your shorts out deep too?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we caught the only fish what we caught shallow were slot fish.
Okay.
And there's something about when you catch a bunch of 17 inchers on cedar, you might want to think about doing something different.
Right.
I don't know what it is. It used to be you could go through those fish and eventually you would get your better fish, but just my luck the last couple of years is I just feel better off focusing on a big fish or nothing.
Are you talking about just in shallow fish in general?
Well, just anytime I'm catching 17-inch fish everywhere.
Okay.
If I'm catching a bunch of 17 inches shallow, I probably feel like I need to go deep or vice versa.
Gotcha.
It's just, it seems like when you're catching 17 inches, that's what you catch all day, unless you change something up. And
yeah.
I can't explain that. You know, there's nothing wrong with the 17-inch fish.
But it doesn't do you any good on that lake.
No, it does nothing. And you're really on cedar, because it's, for those that are listening that aren't familiar with cedar, it's a slot lake. 14 to 18 inches is protected. So all of our tournaments, you can keep 4 or 5, depending on what circuit, which means you're going to keep 2 or 3 under 14. And then you got to have 2 good ones. And 2 18-inchers aren't going to win anything. You've got to have one in the 5 or 6 pound range, and maybe 2 of them that size. So our strategy basically all summer since I got back from Minnesota was, we're going to catch a big one, or we're just not going to catch anything. And fortunately, it paid off most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you though, Ron. I'd rather spend my time out deep. But I know that's a 0 to 0 game too. I mean, you can. Yeah,
but it's that time of year where there's good fish that are moving shallow, and and truth be told, tournament a couple weeks ago, I caught that 7-pounder shallow. So, but our fish weren't there anymore.
Was that cedar? Or?
Yeah, we won English choice down there a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the one when they had almost 15 pounds. Remember?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And those were shallow fish, believe it or not, which for me is kind of off base, but that's where we found them. So
here's a good question right here. I wanted to touch on well, I'll remember. I wanted to touch on staying in one spot in the fall versus moving. So Seth says, how do you guys feel about the slotted cedar? It seems like those unders are getting harder to come by every year. It's interesting. I know that there's sometimes those 13 3/4 are hard to come by. It seems like all you're catching is like 10, 11, and 12 inches. It's a certain period. I haven't paid close enough attention to it, but it seems like those better unders are hard to find it sometimes. And then sometimes you'll catch you'll catch 10, 13 and a halfers in a 4-hour period.
I don't know how many tournaments I've fished over there, and I've had my limit of perfect 13 3/4 inch unders in the first couple hours and looking for an over. And I've had just the alternative where I've caught 2 overs. And I honestly thought that was going to happen on Saturday because we didn't catch it. We didn't have an under in the box at 11.
That can hurt you on that one, especially when they're keeping 5 of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that took us from 9 pounds, almost 10 pounds, right outside of check range to second place finish, almost the first place finish with a couple drops of water and a non-dead fish. I mean,
yeah. Well, and you can give up a pound and some change on 3 unders if you have, say, you come in with 3 12-inch unders.
Exactly.
3 13
and a half or whatever.
You're leaving a pound plus on the lake, you know?
Yeah. Well, everyone can yell at me about that slot limit. Years ago, that lake was a 15-inch limit. And I'm talking 1985, roughly. And we had, it was getting, you either caught a 7-pounder or a 10-incher at one point down there. It was really getting overrun with little ones. So anyway, not just me, there was a bunch of us that, and I can't remember if we proposed the slot limit or if we got the city of Carbondale to have a biologist look at the lake. I don't remember how it worked, but we put some pressure on the city of Carbondale. And anyway, long story short, they changed the limit, and now we've got the slot. But the problem is that we've had the slot now for, these limits are supposed to be dynamic. They're not supposed to be set in stone forever. So now the biologists, though, to be fair, the biologists say when they do their shocking, their assessments in the spring, that they're still shocking up, in their opinion, too many small fish. And you guys had Sean Hurst on your show, and that's what he was saying. And I actually messaged him about a month ago, and I was asking him how the assessments had went, and he said the lake's really healthy and they still want more small fish out of there. But from an angling perspective, I agree. They're not always easy to catch, and we don't catch the big fish like we used to. But that's also true at most lakes, just as these lakes age.
Tournament pressures.
Yeah, it's part of it. And
well, I mean, just like the big ones are harder to catch and not as prevalent at Cedar, there's 2 big ones weighed in. For the idea is 2 big ones weighed in a 20 boat tournament. So there's 40 overs that get weighed in the best case scenario. There's also 60 plus unders that get weighed in. So they're getting educated, just as educated as those big ones are.
Sure.
Not that unders are, I'm not comparing the intelligence of unders versus overs, but they're getting more educated as well every time.
Oh, sure.
Lake.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
They grow as fast as they can up to 14.
Yeah.
inches,
And then they just get
and then
fat.
they slow down and they slow down.
There is a, and I'm not the right person to talk about this. I'm not a biologist, but if you look at a fish population in any lake, it's like a curve that goes up, peaks, and goes back down. And there is a large percentage of the fish population in Cedar that is in the slot. And actually, I asked that question of the biologist. He said 50% of all the fish that they shocked this spring were in that slot range.
Wow.
Half the fish of the entire lake that they shocked. And if that's a fair representation, is that too many in the slot? I don't know. I'm not a biologist. But the more fish that are in one size category means there's less fish in another size category, whether it be small or large. Because only supports the system only supports so many pounds of fish per acre.
In a perfect world, that sounds great. If there's 25% over the slot, 25% under the slot, and 50 in the protected, because the protected is going to eventually be over, and there's going to be a kill off.
Yeah, if they get there.
A normal.
Yeah. Now, he didn't say what percentage was under and what percentage was over. I didn't ask that question.
I think
it might be a good time to get him back on. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. I was just thinking that. It's been a while.
I think on the website, the IDNR website, it actually has some of the ratios on there, if I'm not mistaken, of what was collected over the slot and what was collected under and in. So,
he did say that it was the healthiest lake outside of Newton. What's the lake up at
Newton?
Newton, yeah. He said Newton's the only lake that had better numbers, shocking numbers than Cedar. So
we were talking about that the other day, trying to make a trip up to Newton, like a couple-day trip, guys' weekend. So,
yeah. So what do you think if you were a biologist and you were in control of either leaving Cedar the way it is or making a change? Would you just leave it as it is, or would you make an adjustment?
Selfishly, I miss the big fish. In a tournament that we've been talking about, there was only one fish weighed in over 5 pounds. And that's a bunch of, there was, I don't remember, 30 boats of quality fishermen. Had that happened in 1990, there would have been 20 fish over 5 pounds caught. And I'm not exaggerating. And I think it's because there's so many fish in the slot. So without any training, my gut instinct would be to try to actually get rid of some of the fish in the slot to allow more room in the system to get bigger. And I don't know how you do that. I'm not going to go there. I don't, but if the lake's healthy, it has a good population of fish. So it's not changing the amount of fish, it's changing the structure of the population itself. And how you do that, to me selfishly, to get more bigger fish in there, I'm not sure, but that would be what I would try to do.
Here's an interesting suggestion. Seth says, I think they need to change it to 3 fish, 16 inches. and over like Kincaid.
That's not a bad thought. On the surface, I wouldn't disagree with that. Crab Orchard has the same limit, I believe. Egypt has a 16-inch limit, although there's a 14 to 16 slot, which really doesn't really accomplish anything. But there's something probably about that 16-inch size fish in Southern Illinois that probably has an average age where it's had a chance to kind of benefit the system. But I don't know. I'd like to see some attention paid to cedar. To it has potential. It's been a true trophy lake in the past, and it could be that again.
Make it a 24.
24-inch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sounds like you would have had one that would have been a keeper.
Yeah, maybe. Well, the one thing too, I don't know who said that earlier about the 16-inch limit over there at Cedar. And this is just coming from a tournament angler that has fished out of small boats all of his life. A lot of these boats don't have a live well to manage.
You're right. And fish care can be challenging in a John boat.
Yes.
You can do everything right, but you're in a John boat. And, and I'll tell you one thing I've noticed. I'll put ice in the live well until that lake water gets below 70 degrees. So what we've done is I always start off with 2 bags of ice, 2 small bags of ice like you buy at Dollar General or wherever. And then when you catch your first fish, you fill up your live well about halfway. So I fill up mine. And then I add some catch and release formula. And then that's it. I don't add any more water. And then I always have a frozen half-gallon, like from an old milk jug, that I put in about halfway through the day to, because that sun's beating on the lid of the live well. And on my John boat, it's just a piece of metal, So, and that's worked for us. But yeah, it can be challenging, and and all these lakes get a lot of pressure anymore. So, it's a factor.
Right.
Yeah. Nicholas was wondering what kind of forage does cedar have in it. It's primarily gizzard shad and bluegill.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there might be some threadfin in there, because
there was.
Yeah.
Until this last winter when we had that freeze.
Yeah.
I don't know if any made it through the freeze.
We had a pretty big shad kill.
Sounds like we need to have Sean Hurst on again.
We need to have Sean Hurst on.
Yeah.
So we kind of started to touch on this, and I've definitely got an opinion on this, but Daniel says he fished a tournament early at Lake of the Ozarks this weekend, 3 keepers in 2 days. Do you think the Big Bass Bash has an effect on bass? We were at Alhana. So what do you think? I guess the question is a big tournament affect the population of fish? And me and Jonathan have talked about this before. I saw a lot of good quality bass that had really skinny bellies this year. Not just, they get like that in the summer, but it seemed like I saw a lot more than normal fish that looked like they were post spawn, well into the summer, well into like August. And
we had a lot of cedar this year.
Yeah. And that's where I was seeing them at. And I have to think that that's got something to do with all the tournament pressure that Cedar's had. Just, I may be off, but that's the first thing that popped in my head when I kept seeing those fish like that.
Yeah. Frank Scalish, who we both listen to, all 3 of us, I think, He says that fishing pressure is the number one factor in changing fish behavior. And if you're changing their fish behavior, you've got to be affecting how they feed, I would assume. I mean, I'm extrapolating from what he says, but and now on cedar, in the particular instance, I don't know anything about Lake of the Ozarks, but on the particular instance of cedar, I think a lot of those fish, there's been so many shad in cedar in the last few years. I mean, that lake was choked with shad. think a lot of those fish had grown up living on shad. Then big fish kill happens, or not shad kill in the winter, that we hadn't had in a while. And all those fish are going, what do we eat now? And then, they've gravitated back to bluegill, a lot of them. We've had a lot of bluegill spit up in the live well, where it used to be shad, or we had one crappie spit up in the live well too, I think. So I think that's part of it. But yeah, fishing pressure can't help.
Right.
Yeah, it can't help.
Tom has a good point. Could the number of meat hunters be affecting fish population?
The larger fish population.
Yeah. You would hope not, because if they're ethical and they're taking one out, if they're taking their limit out, and I hate to say it, but I think tournaments probably kill more than meat hunters.
I would tend to agree with that, and I'd have to. I'm guilty. You get delayed mortality. Anytime you just go fishing and you catch 20 fish and you let them all go, you hope they all live, but you don't know that. And for the guy that just goes fishing once in a while and takes a few home to feed the family, I mean, I think probably in years past that was probably more of a factor. But Gene Gillian, who's the head biologist for BASS, had an interesting figure on this. Years past, when guys went bass fishing, this would be an average, I assume, for the country, 40% of the fish that were caught were kept for table fare. Today, that percentage on an average is 4%. That's per Gene Gillian.
That was on Bass Talk Live the other day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A couple weeks ago. And so if that's true, then no, that's there might be a few lakes maybe selectively that maybe get hurt just because you have a particular group of fishermen. But in general, I would say that the opposite is probably more of a problem. How about DK that's overrun with little ones? No one goes fishing there.
Right.
It needs fish taken out of there, and no one will go there and go fishing and take them out of there. They need taken out of there.
And that could be a trophy lake.
Sure. Oh, and it is a trophy lake, but it's there's the biggest fish in Illinois are in Devil's Kitchen, minus probably some strip pitch. They're all trout fed, and but you got to weed through 5 jillion little ones before you catch a big one.
This is a good comment from Hammy, because he's out on the water quite a bit on Cedar. He knows the lake as good as anybody, and he's in the opinion that the cold and the tournaments definitely had an effect on Cedar.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I know Hunter really well, and his dad, and he's a trusted source, good fisherman, and his dad and I kind of grew up being mentored by the same guy, Jay Zapp. And he's right. That winter we had, and then the constant pressure of the tournaments, which I'm guilty of, that doesn't help. So.
Yeah. So Tom's saying, same up here, Gabe. That's on several lakes up here, and those aren't pressured lakes. So are we referring to the sunken bellies, the kind of post-spawn looking fish, Tom? That's what we were talking about.
Back to your point about Gene Gilliland the other day. If you guys haven't or don't listen to Bass Talk Live, that is a great intro to fish care. He had some advice on there.
Yes. Actually, I ordered some fizz kits from Barb Elliott from BA.
Did you really?
I need to do that.
Yeah, I've got them coming. I got 3 of them coming. And you message her via Facebook. She sends them to you, and then you just pay her via Venmo, which I don't know how to do. So I actually had my girlfriend do it for me. But it's $10 a kit plus shipping.
That's not bad.
No. So I got 3 of them coming, and so that way I can put 1 in each boat and have a spare. And
there you go.
And she sends instructions with it too. But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. He talks about fin clips and fizzing and using ice and how much to cool the water, and he goes through all of that. It's really
one thing that surprised me, or 2 things that surprised me, was salt. For one, adding salt to the live well, and I don't remember the ratio. but there was a ratio per gallon that they added salt that helped keep the fish alive. And he also mentioned that they don't recommend any additives.
Yeah, and he BASS could not put their approval behind like Rejuvenate or these things because they're not approved by the FDA, which means they don't. He was talking about, and they might help the fish live, but if you release it back into the lake and then someone eats that fish,
right? What does it do?
They don't. There's no studies showing that that's safe,
right?
So they couldn't get behind that. But I think salt is part of the ingredients in the at least the powdered stuff that we use.
Right. Is that what you primarily use, is the powder stuff?
Yeah. In my John boat, I use that. But then in my big boat, because I have an oxygenator, I have to use G-juice. Okay. You can't use the powdered stuff with the oxygenator. It does something in gels or something. Gotcha. It'll literally kill the fish. I don't understand the science of that.
Huh.
They say if you have an oxygenator in your live well, then you have to use the G-juice stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I use the G-juice all the time.
I think that stuff works. Just
I do too.
Non-scientific.
I Rejuvenate because that's what's in my boat. I mean,
I'm
not tied to any of those brands.
Yeah, I think they all work pretty good. Nicholas, Bass Talk Live is a podcast, but you can go to the BassZone.com and hook up with that program. I highly recommend it we all three highly recommend it if you haven't checked it out.
If you have an iPhone, go to your podcast on your iPhone or Android, wherever the platform you listen. If you just search Bass Talk Live, it will come up. It's like a green and black logo that says BTL on it. And it's Mark Jeffries and Matt Pangrack, and they have guests on. They have 4 shows a week. They have day 4 with Frank Scalish. They had Gene Gilliland on. Their guests aren't as good as ours, but they're pretty dang close.
They don't have Ron, unfortunately, but someday maybe Ron will be on there. He's froze up
Ron's
again.
Frozen again. Oh, there we go.
There he goes.
Right.
He was real serious.
I know. He had that serious
but yeah, it's a great program. Program. Just
you guys had Matt Pangrack from there on as your guest.
Yeah, we had Matt Panger on here. Yeah.
You had Panger.
I forgot about that. Matt is a super cool dude, man.
Yeah.
He's
Illinois boy.
That's right.
But never fished grass.
Nope, never fished grass until recently.
Yeah.
But he's no ego. He's a straight up, just down to earth guy, man. He's a good dude. So
you have to call him about it.
He was nice enough to come on our little,
that was before my time.
Stream. Yeah. Good guy. So yeah, go check that out, man. I promise it's worth your time. In my opinion, I think it's top 5 out there. I want to say top, I want to say it's the best, and it probably is, but there's a couple others.
Probably the most
respected. And they've been doing it for 17 years. So it's been going on for a long time. Mark Jeffries he knows everybody in the industry. He's a super hard worker. He does all the homework. He's just on top of it.
Pre-live, and we're plugging Mark Jeffries here, and I have no problem with that.
He's probably watching, I'm sure.
Yeah, he might be. But he actually, before live tournaments, he went and
he was like a field reporter for bass fishing.
Yeah, he was out at every tournament. Him and Matt, that's how Matt Painter got started. He was a reporter or a media at all the events, and they had camera boats that they were in and taking pictures and bringing all the content to us before live, where everything now is you have to have it yesterday, not today. So
let's see, Dodger, I'm going to call it that. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but he says my boater at the Super Lake of the Ozarks just got done fishing the St. Lawrence River, and they had a fizz kit in his boat and tried to fizz a couple of bass at PB2 that were floating around. Yeah, that was happening a lot at Norfolk. We were catching those fish out in about 25 foot of water, and they needed fizzed. Unfortunately, I didn't have a needle. The day before, I was fishing with Jackson, and we were catching our fish in like 40. Of course, we were throwing them back, but during the tournament, Jackson knew he was going to be catching those fish in 40 to 60. So he got and we ran around looking for a needle. They didn't have a needle in any of the bait shops. I guess they were sold out. But luckily, one of the guys that was staying with us had a needle, and I explained how to do it because a week before at Lake of the Ozarks, Greg had caught a fish, and we were out pre-fishing. He caught a fish and bring it back to his dock because he likes to release, keepers in his cove. Kind of stocks his own cove, but he had caught it deep and it was floating up on the side. So we pulled up a video, and he had a needle, and we learned how to fizz that fish, and it was successful. So you just lay the pectoral fin, and you lay it down flat, and you just come back about 3 scales, lift that scale in and take that needle in, and then you just hold it in your live well, and the little bubbles will come out. You don't want. I wish I had a link to that Bass Talk Live with Gene Gilliard's on there. He really breaks it down. He's like, you don't want to over fizz them because then they sink. They need some air in that swim
it's basically
bladder,
until they right themselves.
Yeah. So it's better to go less and then check them, like 10 minutes later and make sure they're upright, and then maybe you have to fizz them again than it is to drain all the air out of the swim bladder, because then they can't come up.
I think one of the best things that I heard about that fish care, and I was shocked to hear Gene say it, but I think it needed to be said. You talk about meat hunters and things like that. Go catch a bass and clean him. You're not going to hurt the ecosystem by keeping one bass. 4% of anglers keep bass. Clean him, eat him. And when you clean him and you pull that fillet back, look where his swim bladder's at.
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
Then you have a visual representation of where that bladder is at. And, the thought is that it's, that big. It's as big as your thumb. But that swim bladder it's
pretty good size, depending on the size of the fish, of course.
Yeah, it's not something that you're trying to hit, a green or a pea with a needle. You're hitting something that's got some substance to it. So.
Yeah, Blue Cat said that Gene said that stocking didn't help bass populations, but I don't get that. Stocking has to help lakes that have fluctuating water levels during the spawn.
What he said to that point, Blue, it was fish stocking programs will help a lake that is suffering and has poor fishing,
poor spawning or recruitment.
Right, but it's not going to take a lake that's level and make it better.
Right. Yeah, and he used the example of the Texas program as they're not really changing the amount of fish. They're trying to improve the genetics.
Right.
Like with the F1s and so on and so forth.
Let me touch real quick before I forget, and then we'll answer a couple questions and wrap this up because we're coming up on 2 hours. But I wanted to get back to fall. Usually you want to cover water and find the fish because they're so spread out. It's like a game of covering as much water as you can until you find an area that's holding fish. But we did exactly the opposite on Norfolk. And I was thinking about you, Ron, the whole time we were doing that, because I know this is a strategy that you and Dale do a lot on Cedar, is fishing one little stretch for the whole time. So we had a starting spot. Tim had this spot. We had like a late draw. We were boat 108 out of, I think there was 175 boats in that tournament. And he was nervous. He was like, man, I hope I get to this point, because I went by there and checked it yesterday, and there's fish all over it, and they're the right fish. He caught like a 4-pound largemouth, and then he caught like a 2.5-pound spot, and he left. But he said there were fish everywhere. So we get to that point. Of course, there's a boat on it. It was actually my buddy Lance Freeman, because I talked to him a little bit later. So we go to another point. There's somebody on it. We go to another point. There's somebody on it. So all 4 of his starting spots had somebody on it. So we fished one little area, caught a couple small fish, and then we ran back to the area where his starting spot was, and there was another boat on it. So then we pulled over to this bluff end point, and we were in distance. We were probably like less than a half a mile from it, but we could see it. So we were just waiting for that boat to leave. And tournament started at 7. So about 9:30, that boat that was there idled off, and we shot right over there. We didn't waste any time. We pulled up, and we both caught 2 keepers right off the bat. And then it got like dead. It just, you get a bite about every 15 minutes, and then you get a bite about every 30 minutes. And then it was like a bite an hour. Mm-hmm. We stayed there and fished it for 5 hours. We finished the tournament up there. We almost left. Tim's like on the verge of leaving like a couple times. And he said, I got all these bites yesterday at about 2:00.
Yes.
So,
there you go.
So he, and this was 10 at about noon. He's like, man, I just want to give it another 30 minutes. And then we get a little peck. They wouldn't commit. and we'd see fish under the boats, come by under the boat. We were throwing drop shots. All the fish that I caught were on all the fish that we weighed in came on a drop shot. And so an hour goes by, you get a bite, and time's ticking away. We had to weigh in at 3:50, I believe. So about 2:00, we get a bite, and then about 2:30 we get another bite, and then about 2:45 we get another bite, and then about 10 till we get a bite. So the fish were starting to move in. The wind started blowing just a little bit on that point, and like the last 30 minutes we got on them pretty good. But the point I was trying to make is if you got a good area, sometimes your best thing to do is just to wait until those fish move up and start feeding, because that's a location that they use to feed on. When they're up there, they're eating. So when they move up, you're going to catch them. And that's exactly what we experienced. We had to wait like 3.5, 4 hours for those fish to decide to push back up there. But we were there, and it was one of those places where if we left, we weren't getting it back, because there was so many boats would drive by and slow down. Some of them would try to kind of push in on us. And, Tim's like, I have no problem cussing somebody out if they even try to get up on this point, because we've been waiting on it and we were courteous. We didn't rush up there and run anybody off.
You earned it. Yeah.
We earned it. We were patient and we did the right thing, but it worked out. And so that's another strategy in fall is if you are running and scanning and jumping around and you find an area that's holding fish, instead of trying to cover more water, you may be better off to just stick to that small area and just work it and milk it for all it's worth. And that's kind of what Jonathan did. And I know you kind of do that sometimes, Ron, on those Wednesday nighters, but I think the same thing happens in fall. If you've got an area that's holding fish, be patient. And also sometimes those are morning fish. Sometimes they're afternoon fish. That's something to know too. I mean, if you're fishing a tournament that's 7 to 3 and you catch those fish at like 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, you may get that. Maybe obviously that's an evening bite. You may get that bite in the morning, but you need to know. That bite's probably going to be like a low light condition bite. So there's. I just
bass are when I explain that. Bass are kind of like deer. You'll be driving and there's always a field that you see deer in at a certain time of the day, whether it be evening or morning and bass are very similar a lot of times when they're, especially the middle of the summer, when they've been in a stable situation, when they can kind of set up in a pattern, middle of winter is the same way. And there'll be windows where they're at certain places, or maybe they haven't moved anywhere, they just get active. And it's just like you see deer in a field at the same time every evening or whatever. They do the same thing. Fall's a little trickier because fish are moving in the fall typically. The summer pattern is breaking down, and then you have that transition. Fall is basically a transition period into winter. And but there's pockets of opportunity in there where you can sit. And sometimes you can sit in an area and it's not the same fish. You're catching fish as they come through. And maybe there's a place that you found that is a stopping point. Maybe you found a brush pile on a point that they're not living there, but they're stopping on it on their way back into the creek, to feed up on the shad in the fall, or vice versa, or something like that. But yeah, and then the other thing in a tournament situation is like on Cedar, like you were mentioning Cedar, those 4-hour deals we do. The other problem is where are you going to go? Because there's on a lot of these lakes, there's no secrets anymore. And all you're going to is another place that's already been fished anyway.
Right.
So what are you gaining? You're losing that time moving. You don't have a bait in the water. So kind of like our strategy this summer has been, well, we know they live here. Maybe they'll bite tonight. Maybe they won't. But if they do bite, let's at least have a bait in the water when they do, and
well, that tournament on Saturday, there was a 20 boat tournament that went out of Carbondale.
Yeah, I know. It was crowded. Yeah,
I
we
mean,
didn't run around a lot.
We didn't either, but it was the one time that we ran back towards the boat ramp. There was main lake banks and stuff that I would have fished. You look down there and there was 3 boats in a line just going down the bank.
Yeah, it's hard to, and like if you're catching punching fish or something, those shallow fish can get disturbed pretty easily.
Right.
And they may not bite till that evening when everyone's gone. So that's part of the reason. Our shallow fish that we had located didn't trigger. So then once we went deep, we're just like, well, we're just going to stay out here, because a lot of that stuff we had to ourselves. I mean, there was boats around us, but people weren't doing what we were doing. And we kept catching enough fish that, well, maybe the next one will be the big one, and it just didn't work out. But
yeah, and if you guys are on here and not familiar with Cedar Lake, it's an 1,800-acre lake. So 20 boats doesn't sound like a lot until you're looking at an 1,800-acre lake. So you had a 20-boat tournament and about a 30-boat tournament. So let's just say there's 50 tournament boats on an 1,800-acre lake.
Plus
and then
pleasure fishermen on a nice weekend.
So it tends to fish small, especially when the fish are just in select areas. Let's hit this question real quick. Which one do you guys prefer? Fishing a tournament in the late fall and grind it out, or in the spring when the bass are spawning? Which one brings the best out of any angler?
He said pro angler, but we're
angler.
None of us are pros.
That leaves me out.
We're legends in our own mind.
That's right.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know. As far as a pro angler, I like the grinders, man. I mean, they might be slow on the, if you're watching the live streams, they might be slow. If you're watching what do they call it? Bass Live or whatever.
Yeah.
It's slow, but I like to see how people make adjustments. I like to see how people, how long do they stay in an area? What kind of baits do they switch to? When they start to kind of spin out and they have to refocus and take a deep breath. And I think it's fun to see all that happen. And I think when that, one fish makes a really big difference. I just like it.
So what tournament do you like to fish then? Fall, spring, summer?
I like a fall tournament just because I like grass fishing, but I like, I like them all. I really do. I like the challenge of them all. I tend to do better certain times of the years than others, but I'm getting better at those times that I don't do as good.
That's what my brother and I were talking about on the way home. I prefer a struggle bus tournament where it doesn't take a 15-pound bag like Ron had a couple weeks ago. But that's early spring. I can catch 4-pounders with the best of them in the spring, but trying to find that 6.5 pounder to weigh in as your kicker, that's where I struggle, is in the spring. But this time of the year in the fall, finding an area and getting it for what it's worth, that's kind of where I excel, is putting the trolling motor in the water and going. And the same goes for the dead heat of the summer. I can go out. I'm with Ron. I can go out and sit on the same spot for 2 hours, casting at the same stupid brush pile that hasn't produced a fish in the last 100 casts. But I know eventually one's going to trigger down there because I saw them. I know they're down there. So I can do that. I have the mindset to, I guess I call it going brain dead. You can just continue to make that same cast over and over and over and know that there's going to be a fish that's going to bite.
Yeah. I would say that irregardless of the season, I like a tournament where I can do the same thing all day. Some tournaments, some guys are good at junk fishing. Some tournaments you got piecemeal. I've only won one tournament where I would say I was junk fishing. Catch one fish one way and catch another way. I'm much more comfortable just, okay, they're biting a power worm today, let's go. I can do that for 8 hours and I can go 4 hours, half the day without a bite, if I'm locked into what I'm doing. But if I'm not locked into what I'm doing and I'm not sure what I'm not good at bouncing around with doing different things, and I don't really care. I mean, if it's a crankbait bite, fine. Then let me do that for 8 hours, or a jig bite or a worm bite, or but I'm not good at. I'm much better when I got one rod on the deck. That's when I can compete. When you've got to have a bunch of rods on the deck to compete, then I'm probably not going to do any good.
That's what I'm learning to do better, is not trying to fish so many different techniques.
You fish those Wednesday nighters, those night terms, those little 4-hour derbs.
You don't have time.
You don't have time to bounce.
No, there's no time.
Yeah.
4 hours goes by in the blink of an eye.
It sure does.
It's amazing.
It sure does. I think you're better off to pick fishing deep or shallow, and then fishing just a couple baits in any one of those depth ranges, and just stick it out for 4 hours, and it is
what happens.
Yeah. Nicholas says, if you're fishing, we'll try to kind of bust through some of these questions real quick and then wrap this up. Nicholas says, if you're fishing a tournament this weekend as a co, what are you doing? So right now, for me personally, I'm always going to have a shaky head as a co-angler. I think a shaky head is something you can get a lot of bites on. I would be having some sort of a, either a buzzbait or a walking bait in the morning, a jig, if I'm fishing out a little bit deeper, or a 1/2 ounce to 3/4. If I'm fishing up shallow, like a 3/8, probably 1/2 ounce. I think 1/2 ounce is going to get you through just about anything. And, like this weekend, a drop shot, it depends on the lake, but typically a drop shot and a shaky head are going to get you some bites when things are tough. You could throw a Ned rig into the mix if you like a Ned rig. I have a problem getting hung up a lot more with a Ned rig on most of the lakes around here. So that's why I tend to fish a shaky head. But I would just keep it simple. Out of the back of the boat, most of the time, it's hard to throw like a moving bait and actually be effective with it, like a square bill or a spinner bait. And it depends on the boat draw you get. If he's giving you room, you can certainly do that. But a lot of times when you're covering, if you're moving down the bank, he's going to be probably picking off the more aggressive fish, and you're going to get the fish that are not hitting that moving stuff. So you might need to soak it. And also fishing a different water column. If you're back in a cove or something, cast out towards the middle. I saw that when I was fishing Norfolk. I was fishing out on one side of the boat that first day, and my boater was fishing out the other side of the boat. When he switched, I switched, and it didn't matter. We were both catching fish from either side of the boat. That was on a point. But I'd keep it simple, man. What do you think? I mean, you fished a cove quite a bit.
I was going to fishing a tournament this weekend. What are you going to do as a co? I would say the opposite of whatever your boater's doing.
Good.
Now, I mean, if he's throwing a square bill, don't go to the extreme. Try to keep up with presentation so you're not dragging behind. But I would say definitely fishing that, like Gabe was saying, that was the one thing I was going to say. It doesn't matter what you're throwing, just fish something different than he's throwing. Just because of the limited number of fish this time of the year that you're catching. I mean, we fished enough of those fall derbies, and we all know that it's tough in the fall. It's not that you're not going to go out there and catch 200 fish a day. You're looking for 5 bites, especially as a co-angler fishing behind. Hopefully you draw a good guy this weekend. I learned that off my brother this weekend. I mean, I'm fishing one area and he's fishing something completely different than I am. And he put just as many fish in the boat that I did, and key fish that we needed as our unders. So
yeah, if your boater's throwing a jig, unless you know a different color jig that's going to work better than the jig he's got, if you're fishing a lake that you're really familiar with, and they're color specific, every lake has a little something, and a little nuance where they really like this certain color with a certain, couple strands of orange or whatever. Unless you've got that jig dialed in, and he's fishing a jig, a shaky head behind him, or a Ned rig, something a little bit, you're still on the bottom. Or if he's throwing a crankbait, maybe a chatterbait, something you want to be throwing, or a spinner bait. Top water, if he's throwing a buzzbait, maybe
chuck a Carolina rig out the back of the boat.
Carolina rig. He could always catch fish on the Carolina rig. But
yeah,
like Jonathan was saying, just do something just a little bit different. Does anyone catch spots on cedar? You ever caught a spot on cedar? I've never caught spots. I caught the ones with the yellow spots.
Yeah.
Like the yellow pigment.
Yeah.
Word spots.
But not a spot.
No,
the black spots.
Hunter? No, I haven't lately. Well, I say lately, like in a decade. But cedar used to have a lot of Kentucky bass in it, believe it or not. Yes.
They come in from the creeks, I guess, or?
I don't know if they were stock. I don't know. But it had a a fishable population of Kentucky's in cedar.
Interesting.
And I had several spots I could catch them pretty much. I'd go and catch spotted bass. But that dissolved for me a long time ago. I don't know if they don't compete with the largemouth, and if there's not enough, I don't know. But so if they're still in the lake, I used to catch walleye out of there all the time too. Well, not all the time, but walleye were fairly common in cedar. And I don't know if they just don't stock them anymore. Or if, if you look at the original stocking data on cedar, there was also smallmouth stocked in cedar. They didn't take, which seems to be, they've tried it in Kincaid, they've tried it in several places, and they just don't seem to want to take. So to answer Hamilton's question, no, I haven't caught a spot in cedar in a long time, and I'd be curious if he had. They're fun to catch. I think they're a really cool fish. So.
Yeah, I caught quite a few of them down there in Norfolk, and they're real cool fish. Now I've seen a lot of those, the black spots, the pigment variation in the fish. That's like a natural, just
tattooed up.
They're just tatted up. But I haven't seen. I don't think I catch as many of those in the summertime.
I don't know what.
I think it's got something to do with the cold water. Have you heard anything about that? Like cold water versus warm water, and those spots being more prevalent in the colder water?
No, but I noticed. I don't pretend to know what that's caused from, but I know like early spring, you see a lot of those on Egypt.
Yeah.
I always call them cold spots. I just blame it on the cold plant. I know that's not really it.
Right. Well, they got a lot of them in cedar too.
They do. I
was
reading this guy, Curly Burley, on Egypt, suspended fish. Egypt, you can throw the A-rig. It's not confined to the 2-hook rule in Illinois. So suspended fish on Egypt is a lot of times an A-rig from here till you don't have to throw it anymore. So
yeah, till like March or whatever.
Yeah, it gets to be where you're ready to throw something different.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too, or an underspin or a single swim.
Yeah, the underspin, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, sometimes that underspin's better. Until the better fish really group up, a lot of times that A-rig, they don't really want it. It gets better as it gets colder, but if I see, when I'm on Egypt, I always got an A-rig on, and somewhere, if it's a tournament where I can throw it, or if I'm just fun fishing.
Yeah, that's a good point, Brian. I think a good follow-up bait for somebody that's throwing a topwater is actually a jerk bait. I've caught fish behind the boater that's throwing a topwater, a jerk bait, or vice versa. If he's throwing I know you had a good tournament at Kentucky Lake behind Sky when he was throwing like a hard head, dragging it on the bottom, and you were throwing spinnerbait, and you caught fish. They weren't down, they weren't willing to go down or on the bottom, but you come through that water column that's a couple feet above that bottom, and you catch fish.
And the big thing there was we were fishing 2 totally different water columns.
Yep.
I wasn't messing with his fish, and he wasn't upset that I was catching fish behind him, and he was catching just as many fish as I was. So,
yep, there's usually fish in multiple water columns in the same area. They're doing different things.
Hey, Hamilton made a comment that he's catching some spots down at Cedar.
Did he? I missed that.
Yeah, he says he catches them in batches in open water on the jerkbait in the winter. I hope that's true. That's he would know. He knows. Yeah.
Here's a suggestion from Billy. He said, stroke a 3/4 ounce thunder cricket. Give those fish a different look. Let me just go through these questions here, and we'll wrap this up. It's been a great stream, man. We saw a lot of new faces on here tonight. Had a lot of good interaction from you folks at home, and appreciate Ron being on here. It's always good when Ron's been on here.
Yeah, appreciate you having me, man.
He's a good guy, isn't he? Right here. Get batches of them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there we go. Yep.
Very cool.
I'd like to know if these catch any size to them, or if they're just all
if they must be reproducing, or maybe they stocked them. I've caught them up to 3 pounds, believe it or not. That's back when Jesus was a baby. But
there's not a special limit on those over there, is there?
There's no, not that I'm aware of. Most people wouldn't even know. Most people wouldn't know the difference. But
if I caught one, you could definitely tell a difference in one.
Oh yeah, a guy that knows. I mean, they're obvious. But
Braden wants to know what's the top 5 baits of Lake of the Ozarks right now. I know just from the recent tournaments that I experienced, swimming a jig is probably still going to be good down there. Get like a 5/8 ounce peanut butter and jelly, just something that mimics a bluegill. Get a big, like a rage crawler, a yum crawl, something that's got a couple of flappers on the back, and fish around the docks, swimming it. If you've got brush around the docks, let that jig fall to the bottom. And,
you've got some good videos of your practice days down there that you could look at.
Yeah.
I was going to say also go back and listen to Dion. Because he was on, I guess he was 2 or 3 streams ago. He was actually talking about that progression, what's going to happen next. That this is working now, but this is going to get better down the road. That's something to go back and take a listen to that in that stream, because he had the top 5 baits there and what was going to work in the future. So definitely go back and listen to that.
Yeah, Braden, you can check that out on the channel. Just go to the live streams and look at the Dion Hibden. And then there's a couple recent videos from Lake of the Ozarks where Mike and I were out there pre-fishing, talking about what we figured out. I've got another video that's going to drop this week, and it's pretty current. That's about 2 weeks old, but that stuff's still going on. The only thing I would say that's been updated since then is a top water bite's probably starting to happen. So I would just shaky head jig and top water. And then if I was fishing some of these channel swings and stuff, I think a rock crawler is going to come back into play. I saw that going on at Norfolk. There was a pretty good rock crawler bite going on. So, that's all I know. 3 or 4 baits. There's guys on here that know a lot more about Lake of the Ozarks than I do. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. Thanks. That topwater bite is getting ready to start happening. Let's see if there's anything on here.
Tom.
Right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, about the same time.
The time they were parting the Red Sea, and
that's about when I was catching spots at Cedar.
Did you follow Moses out when he parted the sea there, and you were able to see him out there?
I was marking what I was doing when he did that. I was marking brush piles.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, he read about it.
Yes, so that when it filled back up, I knew where to go.
What were you using a hammer and a chisel on a stone?
He read about it in the newspaper that morning.
Yeah. Checking my fishing tablet.
That's right. Let's see. All right, man. We covered everything. Let's wrap this up. It's been great, man. Appreciate everybody out there for staying on here this long and listening to us ramble. Hope you got some knowledge out of this, or whatever. I don't know.
I'm still just impressed that I think we had like 60, 65 people on tonight, and I'm just still in shock and awe, I guess, that there's that many people that just want to listen to us talk.
Yeah, it's a good time.
We rednecks talk about fishing.
It doesn't go unnoticed.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, so same time, same place next Monday, and hope you guys can spend some time with us. I don't know if we'll have a guest, what's going to go on. We got to get through some more of these fall baits. We only touched on the buzzbait. We were going to go through jigs, but we'll just push that off and talk about that.
When next time you're over this direction, let me know, Gabe, and
okay.
And I'll get you maybe get you a couple sweatshirts or something for your giveaways for your Sasquatch thing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool, man. That'd be awesome. That would be awesome. I got a guide trip coming up over there again. So
do you?
I'll be same
guys.
Yeah, they got a hold of me. So we'll be doing that here before too long. So I'm gonna be over there kind of pre-fishing.
There you go.
So all right, appreciate it. And we will
smash that thumbs up.
Yeah, hit that thumbs up. Leave a comment after we shut this down. It really helps the channel. Appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you have not. Thank you.